Hello and welcome to another episode of the Romantasy Readers Podcast. I'm Allie, and as always, I'm joined by my fantastic co-host Nicole, who
Hi.
is becoming so famous in the Bookstagram
No.
community. She has been offered, she's going to get to go to a book retreat fully paid for. So, you're making it in the Bookstagram world. I'm jealous, but also so excited for you.
My life goal has been achieved. Like, if you pay for holidays for me and I'm allowed to go on them and I get to do books like ONYX STORM while I'm there, that's just like my goal in life has been achieved. Like, and officially die happy now. Like, that's just epitome has been reached. So,
Yes.
but
Do
no,
you
I'm
wanna
very
tell
excited.
listeners about this retreat in case they're in Australia and they wanna come and see
Yeah,
Nicole?
yeah. Well, look, the reality is I've kind of got two retreats. First, I've kind of got one that I've been doing myself, which is in Yarra Glen with Novel Nook Bookstore. And look, this is not really an official retreat. I was just like, hey, I'm going to be here. If you want to come, this is a hotel that's right beside the bookstore. Let's just test and try. There's not many of these events in Australia. So I was like, let's see if you want to come. But the reality for us is it's like a Monday, Tuesday. So
Yeah.
I didn't know if it would be a day that is going to be good, but we've definitely got a really cute bunch of girls. We've got like a 4-bedroom house booked, which is going to be super fun. And then we've also got other people coming as well. We'll hopefully do a few little book events. That's going to be super fun. And then I just got invited to go to the Gold Coast to an ONYX STORM retreat up there at Sanctuary Cove with Book World Club and Book World Magazine. And I was like, is this even real? Like, when you're offering me to go, I'm just like, okay, it's a scam. I'm like, it must be. Like, so I'm like doing all this research. But no, the girls are absolutely amazing. I met with them and they're wonderful, and they're building something similar to what I want to do with retreats, book retreats around, well, Queensland and other parts of Australia. And I cannot wait to go there. And I'm like sharing with them ideas. I'm like, let's do a theory time and cocktails and trying to go in like relaxed vibes. Like, I think they're very aware that they're like, look, we're there to also read. We want to connect with people and talk about the book that we love, but we also want to have some time to relax by the pool and read our books as well. So it'll be really exciting. It's going to be really, just to have some of these events in Australia is going to be really, really cool because we haven't had much till now. So, and one day, Allie, you are going to have to fly over and join us if, it takes off and
Someday.
we have some amazing events.
I know. I absolutely will, um, make my way to Australia at some point in the next, hopefully, like, year-ish. We'll see, it depends on how different things go, but I'm really hoping for that, and I
Yeah.
would love to it
I
would be
I
great. I
really
mean,
wanna come to the US as well. So
yeah.
many of the friends I've made, so many of my book besties, everyone that's online, so many of them are in the US. So I hope that I can get the chance to do that maybe in the next 2 years or something. I might be able to get
Yeah.
over there and do a little US trip. It'd be so fun.
Yes. Well, so today we are talking all things Iron Flame. We are giving you a
Yay!
summary of Iron Flame in case you didn't do a reread, haven't been able to finish it, or you just want to hear our thoughts. We'll do it a lot like we did the Fourth Wing episode, where we're going to give you a summary, but we're going to talk throughout it. As always, we're trying our best to be the kind of podcast that's all about vibes and fun, and it doesn't take you 5 hours to get the deep dives, but our notes are very long. We're going to do our best to keep it high level, but there is a lot in Iron Flame. There's
It's
so
a
much
thick
that
book.
happens.
It's
It's a
hard to
thick book.
just pull, like, you're either giving the most basic summary or you're going into a huge amount of depth. And Ali
Right.
has
There's
gone
like
above and
no in
beyond.
between.
Guys, you are safe. She has got you covered. If you are just not able to bring yourself to read it, and look, I get it, right? You read Fourth Wing. I've gone through the trauma of losing Liam all over again. It's all traumatic. I actually started crying even listening to Iron Flame this time, which, by the way, I enjoyed so much more this time. That's like a whole nother subject. But
A lot of people have been saying that to
yeah,
me, and
I enjoyed
I
it
agree with
so much
that.
more.
Mhm.
I'll go into that
Mhm.
slightly. But like, I started crying like chapters before I was meant to start crying, like end of Iron Flame, like even well before Zayden. It was like her mum, and I'm crying from the minute she realizes who Andana is, and that she's like this Shamelin dragon. I was like, oh my god, yes, it's Andana. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was an emotional wreck this time, but I really enjoyed it so much more.
I did too. I've got my Basgiath War College T-shirt on today, so I'm repping my Fourth Wing merch. Um,
Love it.
I found this on like Amazon here in the States, and it's so good. It's got the dragons. It's very cool. Anyway,
Very cool.
well, without further ado, I think we need to hop in because I have a lot of notes.
Got a lot to go through today.
And
It's a
we have
very
a lot to
important
go
episode.
through. So just so readers know, just I'm sure you know this if you've done this, but Iron Flame is broken up into two parts. There's part one, which is basically like Basgiath, and then there's part two, which is everything at Ryerson House in Aricia. Um, I found out online that originally they were supposed to be two separate books. And Rebecca Yaros's editor was like, no, 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 they need to be pushed together. And I am very grateful to her editor for
Yes.
that because I think obviously if the first part had only been one book, it would have been fleshed out more. But I just think that would not have been a
A good book
great,
to read.
yeah, just being all of Asgaiath, Xaden and Violet being separate from one another. I
And
just
going
think
through
that
their
would have been,
communication, like
yeah,
trope,
yeah,
that would have been so frustrating. We needed them to come back together and
together.
reunite 100%.
Yeah. So I'll start with part one and then we'll do part two and go from there. And we're going to talk throughout. But so Fourth Wing ends with Violet having been taken to Aricia or Ryerson House, if you guys remember, Xaden's family home, so that her brother, who she finds out is alive, can mend her after the attack at Resson. And she wakes up and finds out she's still alive. So that's how Fourth Wing ends. And Iron Flame pretty much starts up right where we left off. She wakes up and she realizes that she slept through her 21st birthday. um, and it's been 3 days since Resson. So it's only been a couple of days since she was there. And she basically told Xaden, like, I can't believe you lied to me, whatever. She starts to explore and overhears a council meeting where they're talking about the war and they need to get a luminary from Viscount Takaris, but she doesn't know what that is. And he's maybe asking for something they don't want to give. And she overhears the council saying they don't trust Violet. They should keep her in the dark in case Dane tries to read her mind. But Xaden stands up for her, which is good. And then she and her brother have a little moment. I want to call out from that conversation that he tells her that Naolin is the one who saved him, but it cost him everything. And it's like
Ooh.
italicized. It doesn't say it cost him his life, it says it
Nope.
cost him everything.
That's right.
And she also notices that he has a rune shaped scar on his palm. And I think that is, again, interesting because Naolin himself, I don't think was from Aricia. So how does he know? How would he know about runes? So we don't really know, and we do not find out in Iron Flame what that rune scar is on his hand and what it's
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Um, so
Oh, I have so many thoughts on Naolin.
yeah,
Naolin? Nolan. Oh my god, I always get them confused. I think it's Naolin. I strongly think he is now Venom. Like,
I think so too. I agree.
especially okay, I have read the first 3 chapters, that people send it to me and I have no self-control. So if you send it to me, I'm gonna open it. It's like a Christmas present just sitting there, my little addiction. I just can't help. I've got to draw my power from the ground. Anyway, I can't talk about it, but what happens in there only strengthens my thoughts that Naolin is Venom.
Mm.
And not just
And see,
Venom. He could be a Melgren, full blown.
I I don't want to be spoiled, I just want it, so I'm like, yo, all of my theories are untainted by anything that may or may not have been released on the internet.
I'm so
But
appreciative to everyone that helps me out, but then I'm also like, this is now I have no self-control and
yeah. I think he is alive. I think he is Venom. I think they were lovers. I think they were more than just friends.
Mhm,
And I think that will be an interesting. So there's like either like half the internet thinks that Brennan is bad and evil,
mhm.
which I see the clues for that. And then I think half the internet thinks he's like good. If he's good, I could see him having a lot of challenges, like himself emotionally for Violet, like maybe forgiving Xaden for turning Venom, for taking power from the ground when like his lover did that to save
Yes.
him. Like the
Mhm,
parallels there may
mhm,
be emotionally challenging for him. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
mhm.
But to me, I'm even more interested in that rune shaped scar on his palm. I find
Yeah,
that to be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
suspicious.
I feel like Look, I've just done the graphic audio and it actually really kind of solidified again to me. I felt like Brennan is good. He really came to help Violet at the end. They helped to fight
Yeah.
the Venom. So I do feel like his intentions are in the right place, but I feel like he has very good reasons why he is so intent on leading this rebellion and fighting
Yeah.
against the Venom. Like he has a personal investment in that. It feels a sense of this is my role to do this. I'm not saying though that, as you said, he's not going to be faced with some really complicated issues. Like if the love of your life is a full blown Melgren Venom, can you bring yourself to kill them, or would you
Yeah.
save them, or would you turn for them, or there's going to be some really complicated questions there. It will be very interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more out of the Venom camp in times to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Brennan does tell her that he joined the revolution because he couldn't stand by and watch Navarre let the other countries die by venom behind its words. So, he at the very least states that his motivation is good, right? Like he's here because he knows about the venom and he can't stand by. And it is interesting. He reveals that they've only been seeing the wyvern for about 6 months. So the wyvern are not something that have been around for a
Mhm.
very long time. They've only been around for 6 months. And then Violet is the person who puts together that the Venom are creating the wyvern. The
Yes.
whole revolution had not figured that out yet, which again, mind of a scribe, like she is important, she's smart.
On top of it.
Um, she can figure things out. So, um, he also lets her know that they're very worried that the venom will eventually go after the hatching grounds at Bezgaeth, so they need to be stopped and they need to be ready to fight. And they both agree that she shouldn't learn anymore because of Dane. The other thing that I just because I want to like go back to like the Iron Flame episode we had been or the Fourth Wing episode, we were like, what is that box that had lured them
Yes.
at Resson? We do kind of get an answer about that. Um, it was a lure to attract the venom, and it's made with Navarre craftsmanship, hinting to us that Navarre placed the lure, that lure there to bring the venom and hurt Zayden. But we don't find out why it has Liam's family crest. And I think that's really interesting. And I
Mhm.
think, especially because later in Iron Flame, we find out that Liam's mom was like the best rune maker ever. Like nobody has her skill set anymore. I just think there's going to be something related to Liam's family history,
100%.
that we're going to find out because of Sloane, and Sloane will have a large part to play because of her, because she's from the Mary family line.
Yes, yep, yep. And a siphon. She is a very interesting,
Yeah.
powerful, um, you know, writer in
Yeah.
Navarre. I think it's interesting that Navarre if has these lures that they are using. We don't yet know why they're doing it. We obviously are aware that they know about the venom and they've been keeping it a secret, but we don't know why, how much knowledge they have, and why they would need to lure them to particular locations. Apart from, I guess, doing it from a fighting army perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting times. Yeah.
We meet teenager Andarna. This is all like the first couple of chapters. It all happens. We get a lot of
I
information very quickly.
know.
Teenager Andarna is
Love.
introduced. She is now has black scales, because of the power that she expended at Ressin, and you know, needs some additional, like, things did not go well for her. And we find out later in the book, that she needs to enter the dreamless sleep, and that because of how the dreamless sleep got impacted, she's going to have there's like a bone that doesn't form. So she'll never be able to bear a rider, which I say never to that.
That's right. So do I. I'm like, never say never. I'm like,
Yeah.
just like Violet, who had to fight through her own physical challenges. I'm sure Aunt Dana will as well. But I
Yeah.
love the introduction of sassy teenage Aunt Dana.
Teenager, yes, I love teenager Antarctica, and I wish I got like in the initial like summary that I had here, I had like put all the funny lines that Andarna and Terrence say to one another, like we don't need our allies, but like I
We'll
can't
be
give you the
here all
plot
day.
points and also give you the spicy Andarna lines. So unfortunately, if you want that level of detail, you are gonna have to reread.
Mhm.
Okay, so then everyone from Ressin, so everyone who went to Ressin, they all agree that they have to go back to Besgaeth. Um even though the council and leadership doesn't think that they should. They think that Dane is going to read Violet's mind, and Xaden is like, no, I can train her to block him out, to shield him out. We have to go back. And it's their decision. Violet's still very mad at Xaden and basically says that like if he doesn't stop keeping secrets, they're over. And he says that he's always going to have secrets. So she like kind of breaks up with him
Yeah.
right before they go for roll call. But it's like unclear the relationship status.
No, complicated. It's complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah, they're in a situationship.
Yeah, that's it.
This is the term of the day. So they go for roll call, and Garrick and Xaden are called out as dead. And then Xaden's like, "Oh, that's awkward because actually I'm alive," which is like very funny and very badass.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Colonel Atos makes them tell their story, and Violet backs it up. And they basically just say they were attacked by Griffin Riders, and they don't say anything about the venom. General Sorrengail is very angry and makes Atos go with her to her office. So we know that she was not in on it. And as he passes them, he whispers to them like, we all know you weren't attacked by Griffin Riders. So we basically get confirmed that Atos set them up.
And I think I have to pause here for a minute because I don't know how everyone else feels, but part of me was like, why didn't they just come out and say what they really saw when they get back? Because then they try to kill them for the next 6 months to keep this secret. And I'm like, why are you keeping this secret? It benefits Navarre more than it benefits yourselves. You should be like, they sent us out there. There's all these, I mean, apart from the fact that people might not believe them, there's these crazy things called venom, and there's like these wyvern that are like these blue dragons with two legs instead of 4, and they're really, really evil, and we nearly died. But instead they just kind of create this story. I know why, but there was certainly a part of me that was like, why are they keeping this secret? It benefits Navarre more than it benefits them. It was an interesting choice on their behalf.
Yeah, I know, it is very weird. I did just remember like one prior, like very important point from before we get back to Best Guy. Sorry, in her conversation with Brennan.
Forget anything. Yeah.
I can't forget. This is this is all the like important setup stuff that I think people need to know for ONYX Storm, because some of this stuff does not get resolved in Iron Flame. Brennan tells her that the last time the Venom were like alive was 650 years ago, and they found a weapon to defeat the Venom 650 years ago. And the revolution, which is what they call it, not rebellion, is actively searching for that weapon, but has no idea what it is. So again, I think that's just like an important call out.
Yeah, 650 years.
650 years ago, important to note. Okay, so Xaden graduates. He's made a lieutenant. Dane tries to touch Violet and read her memories again, which like, WTF, Dane, come on. And she is like, if you touch me, I'm gonna cut off your hands. Violet. So Xaden is like getting ready.
Sorry, I have to say, I was so glad that Violet was so pissed at Dane in this moment. I was so happy to see that. It was so justified, and it was really interesting to see this flip in their relationship. Again, really interesting to see it in the audiobook version, where you did really get this feeling, whether it's just how they acted it, where Dane's kind of like, wait, what did I do? Oh, like, why is this? I know what I did, but you seem like, even
how does she know about
angrier.
It? Does she know?
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, you stole my memories. It's like, no, you really fucked up. Like, that was what it felt like.
Yes. Okay, Xaden's getting ready to leave for his new post. And Atos finds them and introduces them to Varish, the new vice commandant, who's basically going to be in charge of like the Riders Quadrant. And Varish tells them that they're only going to get leave for 2 days every 14 days, meaning they're only going to see each other once every 7 days. And Sigale and Tarn have only ever been apart for 3 days at a time. So basically, like, the order is not great for anyone. Atos threatens them and says if they don't keep what happened to Resin a secret, then he'll kill them, basically. And he says the classic line, secrets die with the people who keep them. And that's important.
He says that, but he's also like constantly trying to kill them from here on
out. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm assuming everyone that's here today has read Iron Flame, so I can jump a little bit here to ask a question. But something that has me wondering is because what we see in Iron Flame in comparison to Fourth Wing is that the Venom no longer want Violet dead. They want her alive. They're
They do.
very like, we literally have Jack rescue her. We have instances where they're saying, don't kill the silver haired one, we need her. But at the same time, we're assuming that Colonel Atos is also Venom or working with the Venom in some way, but he's desperately trying to off Violet. So that is a question I have that I haven't got an answer for. But
Yeah,
why does
yeah.
it seem that we have potentially some Venom that want her dead and some Venom that want her alive? And that's probably another question to consider. We're assuming all the Venom work together. They're all part of the same hive mind, all working towards the same goal. We could have a rebellion,
I think there are
revolution
factions.
within
Yep.
the Venom. Like, we
I
could
think
have
so.
that.
I think there are factions of Venom. My theory is that Basgiath and Navarre leadership, when the Venom started cropping up again, decided to experiment with Venom power.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially they did that 20 years ago, and potentially General Sorengale did that while she was pregnant with Violet, which is what I think, and that's why Violet has silver hair. And so there's like, the world isn't split up into like Venom and everyone else. The Venom are everywhere, and there are some people at Basgiath who are also Venom, but they're not connected to this like larger, political outside of Navarre Venom.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so I don't know how that impacts the hive mind or not. It's all very interesting, but I mean, we know that Varish was Venom, and I am like
I know, and
pretty
he
certain that
was
Colonel
so
Atos
adamant on learning Violet's secrets and killing her. And
and then
until
killing
now,
her.
we've always thought that was because he wanted information about the revolution and that. But what if it's more because she has a connection somehow to this Venom that is part of the bigger Venom group compared to the section that, Varish and that are
Yeah,
connected to, and Colonel Atos. This is so interesting, and it's blowing my mind in lifetime,
yeah.
guys. Like, my mind is being blown. This literally just
Yeah,
occurred to me.
it's very interesting. We also meet Liam's sister Sloane and Prince Auric, who is posing as someone named Cam on conscription day. Sloane hates Violet, though Violet protects her from Varish's dragon. And Varish is on conscription day. Varish's dragon comes and like blows fire and kills a bunch of people and almost hurts Violet. And Taryn
Psycho
gets
Dragon.
very angry and threatens to kill Varish and his dragon, which sets up this tension between Varish and his dragon and Taryn.
Mhm.
So classes resume, everything's going on. Violet is struggling to sit in classes and hear about things she knows are a lie.
Mhm.
And so because of that, like she starts spending more time with the marked ones and the people at Resson because they know the truth and it's hard for her. At one point, a first year comes in and asks, "Who is Violet Sorengale?" Another cadet jokingly says that her is her, and he comes up and snaps her neck and kills her. And
I
it's like
know.
this big crazy moment because you're like, "Oh wow, anyone can die in this book." And Violet fights him, and right before he dies, he whispers, "Secrets die with those who keep him." Them
Yeah.
confirming that Colonel Atos sent them to kill them.
Yeah.
Um, Rhiannon and the rest of the gang, Riddock and Sawyer, are all starting to get suspicious of why Violet is spending so much time with Imogen and the marked ones. And like they know that something's going on, but Violet is like just keeping everything from them and won't tell them. Xaden gets to come back for the first time. And they just talk in her bedroom because Violet's still convinced they can't be together. And on his way out, he gives her a letter because he wants her to get to
Aw.
know him, which is so sweet.
I love
And
him.
he basically tells her, like, ask any question you want to ask me. Uh, we can talk about that more in the
Yeah.
future.
You
But
you know what's really interesting? And as I just said before, I actually enjoyed my read of Iron Flame so much more this time. And I think that was around the fact that I had less expectations on it than I did the first time I read it. I really read
Mhm.
this as soon as it came out, and then I reread it, and then I honestly didn't pick it up again. I found it to be I guess almost a challenging read, and I think my expectations at the time were super high. To go and pick
Yeah.
this up again just in the last couple of weeks, I didn't have those expectations, and I just enjoyed the story, and I actually loved it so much. It is actually an amazing book. the depth of the world, what we get is so interesting. And as I guess because I knew this miscommunication trope was going to come in, I was prepared for it, and I didn't
Yeah,
hate it as much as I
as
probably did
much.
the first time.
Yeah.
I was able to, maybe also because I did them back to back, I was able to see how I guess Violet did feel like she needed to stand her ground and to say that if you want a relationship with me, we need to have honesty. I also think that might be related to her second signet. And I could also understand Zayden pushing back on that and saying it's not reasonable to say that we're never going to have secrets. We're always going to have secrets. So we need to be able to work
Yeah.
together on this. So I could,
Yeah.
yeah, as frustrating as probably Verish is the most frustrating character in this whole book, just because insert bad guy basically is what we have. But I understood it much more going through it this time, and I enjoyed it so much more.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so classes keep going. There is like whispers about another black dragon that's been seen in the Vale. And so of course all the cadets are like, "Oh, I want to bond that dragon," but Violet knows that that's
Mm.
Andarna, so she's very worried that Andarna is going to get found out, and the Feathertail secret will be exposed. Um, she goes to see Zayden herself, and as she's leaving, Varish stops her and searches her bag. He doesn't find anything, and he demands that Andarna show up when she comes back for like
Yeah.
training exercises. But he's searching her bag because he basically knows that Zayden and Garrick are smuggling things out, and they are. They're putting it on Taryn. They're just not using Violet to do it.
Exactly.
Is what happens. When Violet gets to Zayden's outpost, she finds him like fighting in like a ring for a pass
I
to have
know,
time off. That
fighting
was
to win
very good
time.
timing for it.
Yes.
It's really cute.
It's hot. Yeah.
It's hot. Yeah, it's really hot. He wins, obviously. And they finally kiss. Um, and she's like pretty much like ready for spicy time. And he's like, "No, I'm not gonna use sex to get you back. I love you. You have to trust me." And she's like, "Well, I'll never trust you again. Like, we can just basically do what we did last year. We can just pretend like it's just like friends with benefits." And he's like, "Come on, Violet, no, we're not doing that." Um, but she does ask him, like, "Okay, what are you and Garrick smuggling? Because I'm getting searched." And he does tell her. So, like, what she asks, he tells her. They're smuggling
Yeah.
daggers made of a special alloy with the luminary that can be charged up to fight and kill venom. And that's why
Yes.
they need a luminary so they can make their own and stop having to smuggle them out of Bezgaeth because
Mm.
Bezgaeth has a luminary and is making those weapons. So they're trying to smuggle them out to get them to the Griffin Riders to get them to people outside of Navarre to help them fight the venom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So Violet gets back from visiting Zayden. Andarna doesn't show up, so Varish punishes her and makes her use her power till she's nearly burned out. And just as and Taryn is like very, very angry about it and takes out the eye of his dragon.
No,
And like
yeah, no, he more puts his like
bites, oh yeah, he bites his
yeah.
neck and had previously taken out his eye, I
Yeah, I
think.
don't think it happened right then, though. I think it happened a little bit later. I think that event happened first before it was
Okay,
this
yeah.
next time that Taryn really stands up and he's like, "You do this to my rider again, like, you have to apologize." He makes him apologize to her,
Yeah.
basically grovel. But there is, like, the 7th ring of hell that is not enough for Verish. Like,
Yeah.
Verish I think there was in some book or movie somewhere where like the punishment was this guy basically became a tree and he just had to constantly have this tree living out of his chest for all of eternity. That is what Varish deserves. That level of punishment. I hate
I like
him
that.
with every morsel of my being.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm still trying to understand what his purpose was. I'm sure we're still going to find that out later
I think we'll find
because
out
to
more.
me, he almost died too easily. He just
Yeah.
kind of was trying to suss out information, terror, um, torture her, and then he just dies. And I just feel like there's more to the story than that. It was just
I
why
think
was
so.
he so evil? Why did he not? I mean, he wasn't even smart about it. Like if you are a
No.
smart villain, you cover it up a little bit. Like Dane would be a really smart villain because he's double agenting, he's covering it up, he's coming across as the good guy. They're the scariest villains, the ones that are not obvious. When a person's just obviously evil and bad, while it's fun to read, it's not, it doesn't, what is this character trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
How are they planning to survive this whole thing? They're clearly making enemies.
It is really strange. Yeah, I think we will learn more about it because, like, obviously, Colonel Atos and Varish were in together.
Cahoots.
So, and
Hmm.
Colonel Atos is still alive. So, I think we'll learn a little bit more about Varish
what they're
through whatever
doing,
like Colonel Atos's
and why
motivations
they
are.
needed this information so badly that they
Yeah.
were really willing to do certain things and put themselves at risk and kill the most powerful rider in the last like 600 years. Like she
That
is.
could that is a weapon to take out Venom. If like you're saying you as Navarre care that like even if you don't care about the rest of the world, you care about Navarre,
Yeah.
why would you want to kill the one thing that can kill Venom? It doesn't add up. It
No,
doesn't make
and
sense.
he treated her like she was expendable. Like he's like, "Oh, we've just got to get her so to get Lua Zayden in, and then we're going to off them." That's something that I've just been like, but she's so powerful. Like everyone else is like, "Oh, she's really valuable now." Like we've got to. Even her trainer, which I'm sure you might speak about soon, the one that's making her like he's not as bad as Varish, but he's still not overly
Kind
good,
of, yeah.
and he's just trying to get her to like hit as many times as possible, has no like not teaching her control or anything. He's just like, right, you did 20 yesterday, let's aim for 30 today. Like he's why was he trying to not really teach her power? I don't know. I think there's potentially questions there, and I really hope that some of those
I think
questions
they
get
like don't
answered.
actually want her to get powerful because they
No,
know what
no.
she can do. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so she almost burns out. And right as she recovers, like just as she's recovered, they all get kidnapped and they have to go on that crazy mission in the woods with the infantry where they lose access to their dragons and their signets, which we find out is a new development this year and very strange. Normally, they don't lose access to their signets. So this is like a new kind of poison that
Hmm.
they're using to cut off your magic and your access to your dragons.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
she also finds out that her father was researching and writing a book on feather tails, which I
Yes.
think is really interesting.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go into the details of the woods because I think the main point of that was just that like there's a poison where they can
Yes,
cut off
yes. If
access. Yeah.
anything, is probably to pay attention to the smell and the taste of those things. That I think it was earthy. I'm trying to remember which one was sweet and which one was like because there was the actual one that cuts off the power, and then there was the one that helps you get it back, like that
Yeah.
kills off this
Yeah.
this dampening. And this is where, as you said before, there's obviously been a lot of experimentation with a lot of different things that has possibly involved testing Venom power within
Yep.
Navarre, and that's how they've gotten a lot of these creations that they've created.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. Totally. There's so they get back from the woods, they're kind of in classes again. There's this weirdness with like the door to the infirmary being guarded all the time. And then there's a scribe who asked for a book because his family like disappeared and he just disappears and they basically
Was it a
find out that
scribe
he's
or a writer? Was it a
it
scribe or a
was a
writer?
scribe. It was a
Okay.
scribe.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, and then Violet and Xaden are always getting told excuses for why they can't go see each other.
Yeah.
So either or like they will go, but then the other person's been sent away. So it becomes obvious that like they're being kept away from one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Violet just decides that she wants to focus on finding out information about the wards and the original six, and she partners with Justinia, who helps keep her secrets, her requests secret, which I think is a lot of people don't trust Justinia, think that she might be bad because many of the scribes are turning out to be bad. I personally still think Justinia is good. I think this is proof
Me
like she
too.
could have easily told on Violet and she did not. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I refuse to believe that all the scribes are bad. Just like, I mean, Violet was going to go and become a scribe. So I
yeah,
still believe that there are plenty that are good, but there will certainly be some that won't be.
that won't be. Yep. Violet and Dane spar, and Dane reveals that Xaden's scars on his back were put there by Violet's mom. And that
Mhm.
makes her like just totally lose faith in Xaden again and, go all crazy. She still hates Dane, and she's very venomous with him. And so Rhiannon asks her why, and like really pushes her and is like, no, this is not normal. And so Violet reveals that he stole a memory from her and she almost reveals the full truth, but she doesn't because she's interrupted by Ark, who has a broken wrist. And as Violet is escorting him to the infirmary, he tells her that he's here because he knows about the wyverns and the venom, and he wants to find out like what's going on at Besgaiath. So
Ah,
he is like has figured it out. And I think this is where a lot of people use this kind of and maybe some other things to theorize that his brother, another like the crown prince, has turned venom,
Yeah.
which could be very. I see that as. I don't know that I see a ton of like textual evidence for it, but it's totally possible. And might
I think
explain why
Arik, yeah.
that could be the reason that Basgiath was experimenting on Jack, which we'll get to in a minute, to try and like cure his venonism because they're trying to cure the crown prince of being a venom.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think Arik is a really interesting character. I know a lot of people that if they don't, I mean, 95% of people love Xaden and want Xaden and Violet together. They say there's about 5% that want Arik and Violet together. So
Yeah,
he's the backup for that. But I completely agree. I've seen, I think it's Emily who did the theory that this whole prophecy of the, or the, the history of the fable of these three brothers, and one having a dragon, one having a
a griffin.
flyer,
Yeah,
and the last one being a venom that draws from the ground. That rather than, a lot of people obviously theorize that it might be Violet, Mira, and Brennan, but the other theory is that it's the three brothers, the three
princes of Navarre.
royals. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Mind you, we don't know if there's one that potentially is a flyer. I think, that has a griffin. I think at the moment we definitely know that Arik has the blue dagger tail. Is it a dagger tail? I don't know. Anyway, a
I
blue
can't
dragon.
remember. Yeah,
And we know that there's one that was potentially bad and evil, but theoretically Xaden killed him, unless he is like Jack and he somehow pulled from the ground to keep himself alive. That would, I guess, be that theory. We don't know anything really at all about the other one. And then I have my whole new theory around Imogen and her connection to the royal
yeah.
family, because I think that she is related in some way, whether it is half sister or cousin, or I don't know, but those light green eyes are going to be important.
Yes, yeah. And you know what's interesting is we don't really come to a head in Iron Flame on Arik basically running away and joining this like dangerous
No,
quadrant.
at no point
You know,
does the
like he
king.
tells Violet that like his dad, like nobody knows where he is. And even at the end of the book, like that doesn't get resolved. So I think
The
there will
king,
be more for
yeah,
that.
the king does not come into it once. Like, you would think at some
Mhm.
point in that whole year, the king would have said, "Where's my son? Why is he missing? Where is he?" Like, you
And
can
he's
be like,
supposed to
"Oh,
be
I'm a
on like
prince
a
and I'm
his
on a
like
holiday in
birthday tour.
Ibiza, or like the
Yeah.
Isle
He's
Kingdoms.
like
I'm
on
out
some
there."
birthday tour and it's like, okay, I don't know about that. Um, yeah, it's very interesting.
It
Okay,
has
so
definitely been
in
unresolved.
between, Xaden comes to Basgiath. He finally gets to see her and reveals that he finally gives her some information about what he needs. And he reveals that he needs an untranslated and firsthand account of one of the original six, so that they can figure out how to power the wards. And they're talking about that, but then they are interrupted by Varish taking Violet for interrogation training. So they really barely get to talk. And interrogation training is intense. Again, like
Yeah.
what is Varish's motive here? But Violet and the others realize that it's more than just training because they've been given more of the drink that blocks access to their dragons. But thankfully, Violet smells it and recognizes it, so they don't take it. But they're there for days and days, and it is not normal interrogation
No,
training.
and they realize that they're going to potentially kill Violet, and they're like,
Yeah,
"We have to escape because they're
yeah,
going to kill Violet."
yeah, yeah. They don't break. Dane is brought in and refuses to use his power on Violet, which is sort of like the first of Dane starting to redeem himself. But then Varish knocks her unconscious and is very angry. So she wakes up and has been healed by Nolan, but then it's taken right back to the interrogation room. And they all realize that like they need to escape, that this is not going to end well because even when she gets injured, they just keep forcing her to do this. And Violet finally admits to them that she has dangerous information that could get them hurt. They do escape, which is theoretically the rule of the game, right? The rule of the training is you escape, and if you do, you get a patch, and nobody's like ever done it. And so they do escape. They get the patch, and but Varish is like very angry that they made it out. So again,
And it
this
had to
is where
do
we
with
get
the
to
ruined
train.
dagger that Violet
Yes.
has, that actually helps her to open up the door to allow them to escape. I think, just quickly, I'm not sure if we've officially covered this, and look, you guys have read it, so you know, but Violet has been keeping everything that happened a secret from her best friends, which has
Yep.
been a really, really challenging thing for her because she is not good at keeping secrets, especially with the people that she loves. And in order to do that, she's put up a lot of distance with Rhiannon, with Riddick, with Sawyer, and that's been really challenging for her. And she's grown closer to Imogen and to the marked ones because they're the only ones that know the truth. And this is part of the first time that she starts to let them
Open
know
up.
that she
Mhm.
has some really serious information that she
Yeah.
is keeping secret.
Yep. The next day they go to battle brief, and there are pamphlets on every chair saying that the Navarre military killed an entire village by dragon fire. But Markham is just like, no, this is propaganda. And he like plays it off as like, we wanted to show you what the propaganda looks like. And it's like, no, I don't know about that. And I don't actually know if we ever find out who put those
Yeah, we
pamphlets
do. It
there.
was the
We
other
do. Okay.
professor. It was the other professor that actually
Oh,
did it.
yes. They
Because
met
she ends up
Dario.
leaving and joining the
Yeah.
revolution as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Good catch. Again, I like listened to the audiobook and then tried to summarize, which is
Yeah.
like a very hard thing
And
to do.
don't ask me the name of said professor because I have no idea because I'm really
Yeah.
bad with names, even at the best of times. So I'm just like, yeah, the
Yeah.
other professor that ended up joining the revolution and was good. Yeah, the other one.
Yeah. And then he brings in the big reveal is that they've been working on mending someone, and it is Jack fucking Barlow.
No!
He is still alive.
But what the hell? All right, pause for a second. Because Jack comes back a completely different personality.
Yeah.
Like a complete like he's like it's like he's died and been born again as like a whole different personality. He's nice now. He rescues Violet. He doesn't even hate her anymore. Like he's had a full revolution. Like he is just a completely different person. I think that's just
Yeah.
even though he may still go off and do some bad things, his whole personality has completely changed from the person that he was last year.
Yeah, and it's just so interesting because I'm still I mean, clearly Jack is on the larger Venom side because later in the book, he's the one who brings the ward down at Basgiath. So he's with the larger Venom. But if he I think it's safe to assume, I don't think we know this for sure, but I think it's safe to assume that Jack was already Venom when the mountain fell on him, which is how he survived in the first place. So they weren't actually mending his body; they were trying to mend his soul and make him not be Venom, which is the explanation we later get. But if that's the case,
Yeah.
then why was he trying to kill Violet in the first year if he was
I
already
actually
like kind of
yeah.
part of this larger Venom group? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's the
I've
story is
heard
not
that
all adding up.
theory. I've heard that theory before, but on my reread of Iron Flame this time, I don't think he was Venom the whole time. He spoke about when he's talking to Violet in the second book at the end, how angry he was, how unfair it was that she got so much power, that she got the big black dragon, that she got all the power. And
Oh.
he said, well, why can't I have some of that power too? So my theory is that because he was obviously losing everything, he was losing power, he got a small dragon. I think it was around the time, I don't know whether he
It was
literally
after
pulled, I don't
Threshing.
know whether he saw the mountain falling on him and he literally started pulling from the ground in that moment. I'm going to say that's my theory, that he did it in that moment to keep himself alive. But I don't think he was a Venom just yet. And I think that's why his whole personality's changed because now he's part of this hive mind. He now
That
has his
one's
whole
still
epiphany.
alive.
He also has all the power he always wanted. Now he feels like I'm brimming with power. I actually know what the big overarching story is. He's super important. They are,
Yes.
from the snippets we've gotten, they're trying to rescue him in that. He's not just an ordinary Venom. He's obviously got secrets that he's keeping that they don't want Navarre and Violet knowing about. So, but I do theorize that I don't think he was Venom at the beginning of Fourth Wing. I think it
That makes a
happened.
lot of sense, actually. Like that he would want to kill her and that the power, like because he's so small-minded, as a human
Yeah,
being. He's just like
a
so like
100%.
that her getting the big dragon would force him at some point to then pull from the ground. And then that's the moment where he kind of stopped trying to kill her. I think that makes actually a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of
There
sense.
you go. My theory.
Okay, so Jack Baller's alive, and then they tell the class that there's been an attack on Samara, where Zayden is stationed, and that a rider has been severely injured. They don't know, they don't say who it is, and both Mira and Zayden are there. And so Violet like loses her shit and immediately rides there, despite threats of what will happen if she goes. You know, she's just like, I don't care. I have to go check on them. And then she gets there and she sees that both Xaden and Mira are fine. Though Xaden had been severely injured. He is the person who was severely injured, but the missive went out and then the healer got there like pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah.
immediately. So
And
he's
this was a
completely
lot Taryn as well. This was also Taryn was really
worried
panicking
about people.
about Scale and Xaden, and they did say that it was also part of that she couldn't control his
Well, that's
drive.
how she gets out of it. So
Yeah,
I'll that's how she gets out of getting in trouble for it. And she blames it on Taryn,
yeah.
basically.
It was a bit of both because she was really like he had to put her in the shower and turn on Cole to help block him
Yeah,
out because she was in a full blown like she was sniffing Xaden. Like she's like, I have
yeah,
to know he's alive. I have to smell him.
yeah, yeah.
So there was a bit of that, but yes, 100% wasn't
Taryn,
the
yeah.
whole thing. It was maybe a
It's kind of like
50-50.
both Violet and Taryn are freaking out, you know,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
who's feeding off of who? They're both very
Yeah, they're
nervous. They
basically
both just
feeding
like
each other at this
go.
point.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. She gets there, Xaden's fine, but to your point, like he is like, what is going on with you? He has to cool her down, like calm her down. They're in the shower, and then we get that incredible shower spicy scene.
finally getting some spice. We're finally getting some, like, forgiveness, some redemption. The two of them reconnecting as they should, as they always should have. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And that does seem to connect them because Xaden takes Violet to do a drop of the alloy daggers to some Griffin riders. So he finally is letting her in on that. He takes her with him, and we meet Kat, Xaden's ex, and Violet is very jealous.
yep.
And Kat also reveals that Xaden had an opportunity to get a luminary, but wasn't willing to pay the price. And so they, that makes Violet really angry. She's like, I want to know. So they leave, they get back to, where he's stationed. And he finally tells her that the price from Viscount Takaris was watching Violet use her magic. And Xaden worries that he'll try to capture her.
Mhm.
So we kind of learn what that's about and that Xaden's trying to protect her. When Violet returns, she is in deep shit for leaving. But one of the professors, Professor Imitario, the one that did the pamphlets,
Yeah.
tells her to like basically just blame it on Taryn and say that it was Taryn who made her leave. She
Yeah.
couldn't control her emotions and like backs her up and is like, we can't expect a second year to be able to block out the most powerful dragon. And that gets her out of trouble with Varish, basically. But Varish searches her and she has an alloy dagger still in her pocket. And she's very nervous. And Rihanna's there and she looks at Rhiannon and she kind of looks at her pocket, and Rhiannon thankfully understands and uses her power to summon it through a wall, which she has yet to do. And which is why a lot of people think that Violet is an amplifier because Rhiannon was able to do something that she wasn't able to previously do.
100%.
So she helps her, but then after the fact, Rhiannon demands to know what's going on. She's like, "You
Yeah,
have to
fair
tell me.
enough.
Like, I helped
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
I
What
deserve
is
this."
this dagger? Like, what is
Yeah,
this? I've never
yeah.
seen one of these
And
before.
so she finally tells her besties, so Rihanna and Riddick and Sawyer, everything.
Yes. Yeah.
And they vow to help her research the ward stone and help her with anything. They're like totally on her side. So yeah, that's good.
And let's just point out for a second that Rhiannon, Sawyer, Riddick, their reaction to Violet keeping secrets from them is the normal reaction to, oh, I've been keeping this like really important secret from you because it's really dangerous. And so I hadn't told you till now. And they were like, yeah, yeah, that's fine. That makes
That
total
makes
sense.
sense.
But thank you so much for opening up to us now. Unlike Violet, who loses her shit at Xaden for like 6 months because he
Every
kept it a
time there's
secret.
a tiny secret. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like was the normal reaction. So hopefully Violet learned a few things from her friends in that moment.
Yes. Yeah. One night while she's on watch, she's attacked by assassins that are sent by Atos because they have the same message as before. And then Jack Barlow saves her again because like now he's part of the Venom and
She's
knows that
all
she's
like
important.
good and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Afterwards, she meets up with Rhiannon and Jessinia, and Jessinia tells her that she has found a vault where an account that they are looking for from the original six might be, but that they need someone with royal blood to unlock it. And conveniently for them, Violet knows that Eric is there.
Come on. Yeah.
um, yeah, Xaden gets there the next day, and Violet tells them about their plan. He's like, "This is really stupid, but okay," basically. And they plan their heist, and they break into this not only the archives but then like a secret vault of the royal family, and they almost don't pull it off. And there's a lot of tension in this between Arik and Xaden,
I
and
was
it
gonna say,
kind of comes out that like maybe Arik has some feelings for Violet. Hard to know,
I
um,
mhm. Mhm.
because yeah,
This
there's
is
some
very, very interesting, and this is why Arik is probably the second favorite, which is still a long way down, but second favorite for winning Violet's heart, at least for a
yeah
temporary period of time if maybe Xaden goes full-blown venom and she needs some
or
support
something.
for a while.
Yeah,
But Xaden and Arik do not get along. Obviously, partly because Xaden killed his brother. That's obviously the
yep,
big reason Arik hates him, but there's more to it than that. There is a feeling of both these guys have blue dragons. Both of them. We don't know what Arik's power is yet either, do we?
mm-mm,
Like
no,
I I'm going to be very interested. I wouldn't be surprised if his power ends up being really similar to Violet's. I
true.
could see like him having another like not lightning wielder but like sun wielder. I think he's going to be super super powerful. And they're definitely very equal
And
playing fields.
I think he definitely like grew up with feelings for Violet, just like
Mhm.
Dane.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
all
But
these
he's going to
guys,
get a
they
chance.
had 20 years to make their move, and none of them did. Like, sorry, Xaden swooped in. You wanted to make your move on Violet. You should have.
Yep, yep, yep. Sorry, our shadow daddy has now won her. Bad luck, you tried.
Yeah,
Better luck next
yeah.
time. But
And
let's just
it
wait and
comes down
see.
to the wire. They almost don't make it out, but they do, and they secure 2 journals. They get Warwick's journal and Lyra's journal. And they believe they have what they need. So Xaden takes Warwick's journal and is plans to give it to Brennan to start translating.
Mhm.
Violet's feeling pretty good, she thinks she got away with it. She's like, "Oh, we did this so great,"
Just
and
like,
then
can't even.
Nolan gives her some lemonade that she drinks, and right as she drinks it, she realizes it has the dragon blocking poison in it, which it's like, okay, come on, Violet, you smelled it before. How do you not smell it now? Varish appears and she's taken captive, so Nolan has basically betrayed her. And when
Mhm,
she wakes up, she's in a prison cell, and they have found Lyra's journal on her. And so they have proof that she took it. And turns out they actually tripped a ward when they broke in. And everyone knew that she had done that. And now they found Lyra's journal. So they're trying to prove that she did it. But they want to know who helped her because they only know that she was involved. They don't know who else is involved and why she did it. And she doesn't give anything up. But it is some intense, intense torture, and she
yeah.
is very close to breaking. And that's when we get the Liam scene.
I know we do. This whole scene is so hard to read. It is so painful. I think I felt anxiety just as you're coming into this, knowing what you're about to go through, because it's
Yeah,
really, really traumatic. I think this is the first time we get to see truth sayers. This is the first time we're introduced in these books to truth sayers and the power they
yeah,
have. We get the little snippet about how is it the truth sayers aren't also considered as dangerous as intrinsic. They're obviously part of this torture that they do. We also get Liam. Enter Liam. I still am of a strong belief that, look, I don't necessarily think she can talk to the dead. She is cut off from her power in this moment unless Endana's power is different and it can actually still work. That is a possibility. But otherwise, I do still think that Liam is. I think something really did happen. I don't think it's just a figment of her imagination. Even if Rebecca has said it in an interview, I still don't believe that's true. I just it was there was too much detail obtained in that moment. Even when I think at some point Varys says something and Liam's there clicking the pieces together. He's going, "Oh, so this means this." So I don't know. To me, there is a sentient being that is there in that room with Violet in that moment. Now, what that means, I don't know, but I'm just still
yeah.
sticking to
I
I
don't
think,
believe it's Liam. I do believe that Liam is dead, but something is
yeah.
there. And it would make sense that the poison that they've developed would not work on Andarna's power because they have
Well,
never been able to
especially
test
if
it on the seventh type of dragon. So,
especially if the like Endana's power works to destroy things that are venom. Like we've seen her fire actually kills venom compared to other dragons that it doesn't
it
work.
doesn't.
So there is a possibility that she is also immune to if this stuff, the truth serum, whatever, the blockage stuff is related to venom power, she may be able to actually it may not work on her. It may not work on her
Yeah.
power. That's a very reasonable reason. If Violet is a truth sayer, like the theory suggests, and if we think of truthsayers in like June, they can often talk to the dead, talk to ancestors, talk to connections. So she would actually have an ability to communicate with people that are no longer alive. So that
That's
is just a
cool
little
too.
interesting snippet to take away and consider in your own time, people.
Yeah, absolutely. Eventually Violet realized that this is just a trap for Xaden. Because if he comes to rescue her, they'll be able to question him about what they suspect he's smuggling out. And it also, like, basically, if he abandons his post as a lieutenant, in the military, that is considered a very bad crime, and they'd be able to like arrest him and then question him. So she realizes that it's just a trap for him. Dane is brought in, and Violet tries to show him everything that happened at Resin, Liam's death, tries to show him the venom. But she thinks that all she's able to show him is helping to smuggle weapons out, because he tells Varish about that. He tells her that she's been smuggling weapons, and then he pretends to stab Violet, but at the last second he turns and he stabs Varish instead.
Yes, yes. I think
Um,
what's important to point out in this scene, Dane is using his powers. Varish has asked him to use his powers, and this is like where last time he didn't, this time he does. But
he
Violet
does.
tries to take control of it. I think Liam might suggest to her, show him what he's meant, what
Yeah,
you want him to see. Tells her to show him what, like, so then she goes and she tries to show him everything that happened in Resin, everything, all the venom and that. But then he comes out and he suddenly is like, oh, she's been stealing weapons, blah blah blah. So she thinks, oh crap,
it
he
didn't
only
work.
got what he wanted to get. He didn't see what
Yeah,
I tried to see until he goes and
he
stabs
goes and
Varys.
stabs Varish. So we know
Yes,
that he actually
good
got
job,
the
Dane.
right
We
stuff.
like you again. You've redeemed
Yes,
yourself.
yes. And then there has been like another person there the whole time. I don't remember their name. And Dane is about to stab that person too when Xaden shows up and stabs her. So it's very dramatic. Like, Dane tries to kill her, and then all of a sudden she's dead, and you see the sword, and the chapter ends, and then it turns out that it's Xaden. And Xaden is like losing his mind. He's losing his shit. He's not okay because he's found out that Violet's like been taken. We learned that he has been on this like killing spree, and he's just like dropping wyverns on the border of Navarre. Like,
Love it.
he is not dealing with this okay. He wants to hurt Dane, but Violet tells him that Dane helped her. And we do find out later that Xaden actually read Dane's intentions and found out that Dane had good intentions. And together, she and Xaden kill Varish, and they do kill him with an alloy dagger. So if he was
Yes.
Venom, he should still be dead.
Mm-hmm.
On their way out, they run into General Sorengale, who gives her an antidote for the dragon blocking poison, and reveals that she struck a deal with Xaden to keep Violet safe. And she tells Violet that she wanted her to enter the Brider's quadrant because she didn't want her under Markham's thumb, because he is very committed to hiding the truth about the venom. So it's kind of this tense moment. We still don't exactly know where General Sorengale lands on like
Yeah,
whose
but
side she's on, but she is
we
helping
start to
Violet in this
realize
moment.
that that she was trying to protect Violet. She felt that Violet would figure out the truth and would probably end up being killed, and she
Yeah,
felt that she had a better chance of surviving as a writer than she was going to as a scribe.
yeah,
It's the first time we get some understanding of where General Sorengale has been in all this time, and she
yeah,
very much reiterates how she will do anything for her children. That she'll basically destroy the world for her children,
for her children.
which I can get behind because I'm a mum and I get it. I would protect my children too, and that's yeah. I definitely softened and really connected with General Sorengale in this book because
Yeah, yeah.
we're all a mama bear.
Xaden wants to leave like immediately, but Violet says like, no, we have to tell Basgiath the truth. We have to give them the choice to leave as well. And so Dane, of all people, is the one who goes to like, their information. He tells them. Taryn shows everyone Resin through memories, and a ton of people leave with them for Ryerson House, and that ends part one. Um,
We
yeah, so
are one
we spent
hour
an hour on
into
part
this
one, and that's not
podcast
even.
and we've only done part one. Like,
I
guys, if
know.
you need to go get yourself a drink, a coffee, a wine, a glass of water, like, take your little 60-second break because we're about to enter part two.
There's a lie in part two.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
information to share today. It is very exciting.
Yes. Okay, so part two is basically Ryerson House and the War. So it's interesting. It kind of starts in parallel to the same way part one starts. Violet wakes up in Xaden's bed and they have some steamy time again.
Mm-hmm.
There are cadets everywhere, and the council is like kind of mad that they've been exposed and that they brought all these people here. But then Xaden pulls his whole like "this is my house" card,
My rules, my
and
woman,
he's
my
like,
throne, all that
yeah.
stuff.
And so classes resume, and they basically just make a second school at Ryerson House, but with Battle Brief telling them the truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Andarna wakes up from her dreamless sleep, and Taryn tells her she'll never bear a rider. We've already talked about that. Never say never. But then Taryn senses like 40 dragons headed that way with Mira approaching, and he wants to attack. But he doesn't, and Mira says that Xaden sent for them and they're there to join the revolution. She
Yes.
saw the wyvern. She sees Venom, sees that he's alive, and then she immediately punches him in the face, and that's how the chapter ends, which is just
Yeah.
fantastic.
And appropriate. Brennan
Inappropriate.
1000% deserved that. And I'm so glad that Mira just did what we all felt. Like Violet was like, What? You're alive? Oh my God. Explain this. We
Yep.
haven't seen you in 7 years. We've all thought you're dead. And yeah, Mira responds in the way you would expect, especially from a rider. She just punches her brother and says, You asshole, I cried for you. I thought you were
Yeah.
dead. And you've been hiding this whole time without even just a little sneaky letter or something.
With nothing. Yeah. So she's mad. Violet is slowly translating the journal, the Warwick journal, and she translates the line, "We gathered the 6 most powerful riders in residence, and the blood of the 6 and the 1 combined, and set the stone ablaze in iron rain." So she thinks that they just need a drop of blood for each of the most powerful riders there, and that it will reactivate the wards. They do that, nothing happens. So Violet's really upset. Felix starts training her, and it takes a little bit different approach, right? And is less focused on this, just like, you did 20 yesterday, do 30 today, right? Like, he is like, that doesn't do anything, you need
Yeah.
to be accurate or it doesn't
Exactly.
matter.
You're not even aiming. You're just
Yeah,
shooting
like,
random. Like
however many lightning strikes you do means nothing if none of them are accurate. And so he reveals that her signet is actually just pure power. It's not just lightning, it's pure power. And he gives her a runed orb to use as a conduit to help her adjust to her power. And it does help a little. She decides, I'm trying to go through some of this early stuff quickly because there's just a lot that
yeah,
happens.
you've read it.
She decides that she's going to go get the luminary on her own and give to Karis what he wants, seeing her magic because they need it. And she convinces Brandon and Mira to go with her and keep it a secret from Xaden. But when she gets there, he's already there. Like, Sigale sensed them leaving. They both freaked out. They went, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about who Takaris might be. I think he's a very interesting person because we learn in the snippet that he is a very distant cousin of the Queen of Pomorial, but that she made him her heir because she's not married. She doesn't have any heirs. And it's kind of like, it's a very controversial political choice to make. And he also doesn't have his own children either. And so Serena, Kat's sister, is his heir, which means Kat is like third in line to the throne.
Yeah.
So I just think that, and it's interesting that Takaris, we find out, knows a lot about the Venom, is able to capture Venom. Like, I don't actually have a theory here. I just think that who Takaris really is going to play a significant role in ONYX Storm.
Yes. Yes. And why he has been collecting so many things. They talk about how he has the power to identify what people want, and he tends to look, he likes to collect. Why did he want Violet? Why does he want to obtain all these things? Is it just for selfish reasons? He also had a real connection to the Isle Kingdoms. Is it the Isle Kingdoms? Is that how it's
I
called?
think so.
Until recently, we kind of learned while Violet's getting dressed that the silks come from there, but they no longer have a connection anymore because they consider it not safe to do trade with them anymore. So I think there's something really interesting there as well. And I think that those parts of the world are going to be explored in ONYX Storm, and we might get more understanding of Takaris's role and involvement in all of this. But I think it's definitely very, very interesting. Kat was extremely frustrating in this whole part of the book, just FYI.
Yes. Violet and Xaden are fighting a ton, mind to mind. They're very angry. And Violet gets even more emotional when she realized that Xaden has his own room there because of his betrothal to Kat. He was like, come get dressed with me. And she's like, no, I'm going to stay with Mira. So he reminds her that they are absolutely in enemy territory, to be careful. And she tells him that he's acting like Dane because he's being so protective of her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she gets dressed in the dress and leaves her hair down. And Kat just is picking at her at everything to make her fluster. She tells her that Xaden likes color, that she looks bad with her hair down, that she's not going to make Xaden flustered, that, he's going to feel like she's so petty and immature for fighting with him. All things that are not true about Xaden. And he sees her and loses his shit because he's just like, you're freaking gorgeous. And he had
Yep, you're the
previously said,
hottest
if we're
thing.
ever fighting, leave your hair down. And she does. He makes the room dark so he can kiss her and so they can talk. And he reveals that Kat can manipulate emotions and has been doing that. And he apologizes for being overprotective. He's like, you know what? You're right. I hear you on what you said about Dane. Like I will be better, which I think that's good. I think it shows that Xaden, is different and is better.
100%.
Um,
100%.
yeah, Takaris reveals that he wants Violet to blow up the very special Ryerson family chest, which is
Mm-hmm.
priceless, and that Takaris got in negotiations to betroth Xaden to Kat because his father was trying to make an alliance. Again, why is his father trying to make this alliance? I think Takaris is important here. And the deal is that Violet has to blow up the chest, and Xaden can't step foot into the arena. Mira goes with her, basically for emotional support, since Mira's power is not working this far from the wards. And just as Violet is about to aim at the chest, Venom jumps out. Violet can't get him, and he says to her, "It's you, the one who commands the sky. I'll be rewarded when I return with you," which I think is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then Violet says, "Will you be rewarded by your sage?" Right? And he says, "Which sage?" I thought that was also really interesting. That's not something I caught the first time. Every time we've
Mm-hmm.
been talking about this, we've been talking as if there's a singular sage, and it seems
Well,
like
there's
that's
also
not
the
true.
level above the sage as
The
well. There's the
sage, the
Melvin.
general. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we know that there is an even higher level. So yeah, we still have so much to learn about the Venom, but what we do know is that they're organized. There are different levels. They're training each other. They obviously have the
Yeah.
Wyvern, and there may still be so much more to come.
Yeah. The Venom starts to take power from the ground, and Brennan tells Mira she has to shield, but she's like, I can't. And then she does. And again, this is one of the reasons why people think Violet might be an amplifier, but I will say in the text that starts the chapter, it says that sometimes Mira can do this when she's under extreme emotional distress. So I don't know.
Yes.
Um, Violet is like, you have to trust me, get Mira out of here. The sage says he's excited to take her, and he says this, and again, this I thought was really interesting. And he says, and to think you'll bring a dragon with you. You can't be parted for long, can you? And I'm really curious about, is he talking about Violet and Taryn not being able to be parted for very long? Because I don't know if that's something that we've seen or talked about, or is he talking about Violet and Xaden, and so Sigale would be the dragon that she would bring with him. I don't know. It seems to be an intentionally vague line, so I just wanted to call that out there.
Yeah, 100%.
She waits till the very last second, pins the venom to the ground, strikes lightning at the water, and it kills her. And Xaden, when she gets back to the top of the amphitheater, Xaden is very mad, has Takaris by the throat.
Takaris by the neck, about to kill
Yeah,
him,
with his power.
like really proving that Takaris is the king here, but he doesn't have much power over Xaden. Like Xaden could
No,
wipe them out in a moment. If it came
in
down to
an
power,
instant.
Xaden's basically in control. Complete
Yeah,
control.
yeah. Um, they enter negotiations. He wants them to provide weapons, but he also wants them to take the 100 Griffin cadets back with them. And he reveals that he has captured multiple venom, but we don't know why. And we learn that the chest is ruined to suspend objects in midair, which we have talked about many times on this podcast as being clearly
Yes.
designed for venom. And is this prized Ryerson family heirloom? Why might that be? Is
100%.
Xaden's mom a
100%.
venom, or what's that for? It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
His family definitely have a history of with Venom, whether that is that family members have been connected to Venom or they've just had it as like something that would allow them to trap a Venom if they needed to for protection reasons, or like we know that a lot of the dragon creation and lore has happened around where Zayden is from. That like
Yeah.
that is even where Taryn and the black dragons have tended to be birthed and things like that. So it's very powerful ancient ground. A lot has happened there. There's a lot of history that has basically been lost that we still need to find out about.
Yeah. Yeah. So they agree, and the griffins can't fly to Ryerson House, so they have to hike up this massive cliff. It's treacherous, very dangerous. Um, a friend of Kat's dies, and she blames Violet. Taryn feels a power and feels and realizes that the first hatchling has been born at the Oretian hatching grounds.
Mhm.
And that anyone with power nearby could feel that. And so a wyvern shows up because he felt that. And Violet kills the wyvern, but now they know that the Venom know about the hatching grounds and that they're
Yeah.
unprotected. So it just kind of ups
Mhm.
the stakes. They settle into classes with the Griffin Flyers. They're taught about runes. Tensions are very high
Mhm.
between the Flyers, and the Riders. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to fight it out on the mat, and then you're going to be combined. And so Kat and Violet fight, but Kat is just like all in Violet's head, is making her crazy. And they're also evenly matched because they were both trained by Zayden. And
Oh, that
Violet,
would
that
be
really digs it.
tough. That
That
would
Violet,
hurt. That would be
yeah,
like, oh.
yeah. And Kat really says some things, just really gets to her.
Yeah, she sure does.
Yeah. And to the point where Violet even wants to stop, and Kat is like controlling her emotions so much that like it's kind of like Kat would rather die than like let Violet win. Like
Mhm.
Zayden has to come. Like Zayden comes and doesn't intervene, and then he asks her in his mind, like, "Do you want to kill her, or do you want me to help you?" And she's like, "Help me. I don't want to kill her." Um, and Kat reveals that she's doing all of this for a crown, which is the first time it kind of comes up that, she's like, I don't care about his affections. I'm doing this for a crown. I want his name. I want the Ryerson family name. And
Mhm.
Violet hasn't really thought of it that way until this moment, and then also
Yeah.
gets in her head about how she's not enough, like she's not noble born, blah, blah, blah. Um, so she beats her. Zayden helps her out, and he takes her to the assembly room. He kicks the council out of there. He drops her into what he describes as a massive chair. And then he starts to undress her, and she protests. And he's like, "No, this is my house, my chair, my woman," which is just
Mhm.
like, oh, the throne room scene is so good. Um, Things are getting heated, and he reveals that it's actually Tyrandor's throne. And he like makes her hold the orb conduit so she doesn't accidentally release her power during sexy time, which I find to be hilarious. Okay, and now I'm gonna talk a lot about what happens here because I think it's interesting. Right before she goes into Zayden's mind, we get the line shimmering onyx wraps around my mind and everything intensifies. She enters Zayden's mind. She says it's her power, it's his power and thoughts flooding their bond, but then she later seems confused about who is really feeling and controlling what. Like,
Mhm.
just as she settles down, so she goes into his perspective, she sees how much he, like, loves her and
Yeah,
needs
and
her,
she
which is
actually
great.
says, like, "What happened there?" But then it's never explored. She's like,
No.
"What just happened?" And it could be interpreted as, "Hey, that was mind-blowing." But I
Yes.
think she was also like, "Whoa, I felt like I was in your eyes, but I was here, and whoa, some really
Yeah.
crazy stuff happened," but it doesn't get explored, it's just left at that.
Yeah. And then just as she's, like, settles down, she says, like, "It's my lungs I feel draw air, my power that crackles through the orb, my heartbeat that slows." So, I don't know, like, as much as people think that this is Xaden, like, pushing into her mind, I really think that Violet is pushing into his. I think that Violet has some kind of perspectives, ability to see through others' perspectives. There's other moments where this happens.
Mm.
We've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I won't rehash it.
Yeah.
But
And do I
yeah,
recall I would need to go back and reread, but does Xaden kind of jump back or something at
he
the end
does.
of that
He
scene?
does.
Does
He
he
gets
end up
really
going back
weird.
against the wall and he's kinda like, "Whoa," like, so he yes, we don't know whether it's him or her, but
Yeah. And
something
he
definitely
says,
happens
I
and he has
shouldn't,
to break it.
yeah, he says, I shouldn't have done that, implying he thinks he did it. But again, he does seem to be very freaked out and confused. And the excuse he gives for like not touching her is he's like, I just want to be able to show you that you don't have to reciprocate steamy time. But I don't know if that's, I don't know. He gets very, very weird, and then they just kind of don't address it. So I think there's something there because Violet's power has always manifested when she and Xaden are emotionally connected, and she's like, her emotions are elevated. Um Violet and Xaden talk about how Kat can only amplify emotions that are already there, and like Violet needs to find her center. She asks if he's a king, and he says no. And then he's like, "Oh, I guess technically yes, but I don't want to be a king. I don't think of myself that way." So I think that's really interesting. Um, the Flyers join their squad. Kat's added to her squad. Of course, it's very tense. And Dane and Violet have some reconciliation, and they work on translating together. So they're starting to do that. Dane kind of retranslates what Violet had translated, and it says the breath of life of the six and the one combined. And so they actually think they need the six strongest dragons, one from each den, to put their fire on the stone, and that will be what will reactivate the wards. But Violet also realizes that if they do that, the Flyers will be powerless. And so she wants to talk to them about that first. And she does. She talks to them about it. It earns her some major points. She tells Xaden that she doesn't want to power it up, and so she and Xaden and Dane or that they don't want to fire it, but they should at least power it up. So they go, and it takes them weeks to like put their power into the stone to get it ready for the dragon fire. And that's important for later, that it took them 3 people weeks to power it up. Then there's a training session to detect runes for her squad. And during this, Sloane asks Violet if she has a second signet, which is the first time she ever considered it, which is crazy. And then Sloane reveals that if you bond a dragon who bonded someone in your line, you either go mad or get another signet. And Violet realizes that Xaden must have another signet he hasn't told her about. She's very mad. They get trapped in the caves by Varish's dragon, and Taryn is too big to help them. And so Anjarna shows up and protects them and eventually kills Varish's dragon. But in the process, Sloane, her signet manifests as a siphon, and she accidentally drains Violet of her magic. And Kat takes her to a healer, and so they somewhat find a truce.
And Sloane is so cute in that moment because she's like, oh my God, she's like, are my eyes red? Did I just turn venom? I think I drew from the ground. Like she doesn't realize that she's a siphon yet. She doesn't realize that's just her normal dragon power. She thinks that she's somehow accidentally turned venom, and it's super cute.
Yes, it is so cute. Xaden and Violet have a big fight about trust because Xaden's upset that Violet, protected Kat. Xaden says he doesn't think Violet has forgiven him yet, truly, for keeping secrets, accuses her of not fighting for him. He says that that's why he keeps insisting she ask questions, because she needs to show that she's willing to fight for them to make them work. I don't buy that. I think there's a reason why he has to, either it has to do with her signet, or he is ruined or spelled that he can't answer her questions or something like that. I actually think that it's not. I think Xaden's not telling the truth here. He reveals that he knows that she found out about the deal with her mom, and he's just been waiting for her to ask, and she never has. And so then she's like, she says that she didn't want to ask because she's afraid the only reason he fell in love with her is because of her mom, and not anything special about her. So it's very, very intense emotional scene. And finally, she's like, fine, you want me to ask questions? What's your second signet? And he panics and doesn't answer. And then Brennan is banging on the door, and he's like, there's a horde of wyvern. They're flying towards us. We have to go. We have to go. So they don't get to talk about it. So then finally they go. They power up the ward. The dragons breathe fire on it. They think it works because they've felt a hum. But they don't have time to investigate. They have to fly very quickly to meet the wyverns in case it doesn't work. And they arrive at the edge of the wards, and Xaden is like, hey, we're truly alone. We can talk about it now. But then he doesn't want to tell her his signet. He's like, don't keep, so she's like, fine, I'll guess it. And he's like, don't. You're going to fall out of love with me. She does guess it. He's an intrinsic. And he reveals that he can read intentions. And Taryn is super pissed at Sigale because Sigale kept this from Taryn, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then Xaden, has the line of it took less than a minute for you to fall out of love with me. And Violet's like, I'm not that fickle. But they don't really get to talk about it anymore.
There's more drama unfolds. We are reaching the end of the book, and a lot of drama is unfolding. They don't have time to process their emotions.
Yeah. So the wyverns arrive and they die when they cross the ward. So they're like, woohoo, it worked, it worked. So they think they're good. The sage from Resson and Violet's dreams, or so we think, is there, but he's very focused on Xaden, and Xaden gets tense. Um, and we don't know why. Although we find out, Xaden has been likely having those same dreams. The sage calls off the attack. They go back to Ryerson House. Everyone is celebrating, but then the council pulls them in and says that a missive has arrived and Melgren's asking to meet. Um, and then Serena reveals that she can still do magic, meaning something is
Yeah,
wrong with the
not
wards.
MQR with the new wards.
Yeah. Okay, they meet with Melgren. He reveals that the Venom are going to attack and will win, so he wants their help fighting. And in exchange, he'll give Aricia independence. Brennan declines. General Sorengale is shocked he's alive. She grabs Mira and Violet afterwards and tells them that Warwick's journal is actually wrong. He did not want anyone to have the ability to create wards. He only wanted Navarre to have it, and so his journal lied about them. And they'll quickly lose their effectiveness. So she gives them Lyra's journal, which she says has the truth, and tells them to check the wyverns that fell for
And I think
proof.
that that's really interesting. I wonder if we're going to find out more about why Warwick didn't want people to know how to
And
create
who
the
he
wards.
was,
Like, because not just that, but you also have to think we need to keep this as a, in case you ever need to make a ward again, that he maybe disagreed with the whole idea of having a ward at all. Maybe there was a good
maybe.
reason for that. We're assuming that like he was somewhat a villain and Lyra was actually good, but we don't yet know if there's a bit more to the story.
Yeah, yeah. Mira and Violet do that. They check the wyverns. There are onyx stones with runes on them, which is interesting because they're kind of, and they, Violet even says, like, who gave the Venom runes? Interesting. Could be potentially maybe Zayden's mom, maybe somebody from Aricia. And as they hold that onyx stone, a wyvern opens its eye. So basically proving that their ward didn't fully work. Violet blasts it with lightning and it truly kills it. And they go back, but they're like, shoot, we need to figure this out. Um, a week passes and Xaden has been immediately sent away to protect town, so they don't get to talk about anything. In that week, Violet's been arguing with Brennan to help Navarre. They won't budge. Violet or Xaden finally returns and calls for Violet in a sparring room, and they fight it out both physically and mentally. And Violet's like, "You can talk to me about it here," and he's like, "I can talk to you in your mind." They fight. She makes him promise that there's going to be no more secrets for them and that they don't have to ask the right questions. He just tells her stuff. And it's a big moment for them. And we get the
Yeah.
very important line here. I'm someone who needs information. And Rebecca Yarros said that there's one line in Iron Flame that hints at what the signet is. And I'm convinced that this is the line. I
Yeah.
think people interpret it many different ways. I think like almost every person who has a signet theory ties it back to this line in some way.
I mean, I
Like,
think it's still an open line, isn't it? You can be like,
yeah.
oh, it's connected to this, it's connected to that. Like, she'll get the information via traveling through time or via amplification or via being a truth sayer. Yeah.
Yeah. Um they have that moment, they agree. She asks him about his mom and he reveals that the betrothal agreement between his parents was that once an heir turned 10, she was free to leave and she did that and he hasn't seen her since. So
This is
theoretically
very
she's still
interesting because it
alive.
doesn't seem like Zayden's dad was a bad guy. I mean, yes, he ran the
No.
rebel, the rebellion, but Zayden's fond of his dad. So why did his mum not want to have anything to do with him? I mean, he was a freaking king for God's sake. Like you would have thought it would be a positive relationship for her. It
Well,
seems
and
like there was no love in it whatsoever.
it clearly was not a love relationship. It was clearly some kind of arranged marriage, which you only get with royals. So
Mm, but
what
it's very
royal is she?
yeah, and not just that though, but also that she had no love for Xaden. Because okay, she might not
Yeah.
have had a great deal of love and affection for her, the king, the husband, but what about Xaden? That's her child. Like
Yeah.
stepping away from that, who does that?
Yep.
Unless they're like full blown venom and don't have a lot of care for anything in the world because all they want is power. Or yeah, I don't know. It's complicated anyway. I hope we learn
Yeah.
more about Zayden's mum because she is a
Yeah.
very questionable character right now.
I think we will, and I think she's very important to the story. I really do.
Mhm.
Violet puts together that Samara will be the distraction so that they can take the wards down at Basgiath. Again, there's that scribe mind. And so she says that they have to go help Basgiath, and about half of them do, right? Her whole squad, of course. Brennan initially says he's not going to, but then at the last minute, he shows up to fly out with them against the council's wishes. And I think that's really important to him being good. I really do. I think, when it came down to it, he made the right choice. So they fly very quickly into Basgiath. They aren't stopped. They think that's a little bit weird. And Violet tells her mom everything and begs her to check the wards. And General Sorengale is like, oh, everything's fine. But they agree. They go down there and they discover that all the guards are dead. And Jack Barlow and his dragon are down there. They fight. The ward stone breaks. It's very important to note that Jack's dragon is killed and Jack is completely fine.
Yes, he just
He
survives,
does
no
not die.
problem.
And we have always been told, right, that a rider without their dragon is dead, that if your dragon dies, you die. And so either that's not true, which would be interesting, or if you are Venin, that reverses. The dragon dying will not kill you.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
I
I
do
think
too.
that's why so many fewer dragons have been bonding, because their riders are turning venin. Everyone's pretending like they're dead, but they're not. They're venin, which means that all those dragons are still technically bonded. And that's why fewer
Yes,
dragons
yes.
are bonding.
And also it flips the power play as well, because normally the
Yeah,
dragon is the more powerful of the connection, but it seems like when they turn Benin, sometimes the rider can control their dragon
yeah,
completely. It's something that's going to be very, very dangerous for Sigale in ONYX Storm. Is putting her in a very, very precarious situation to be connected to Zayden, given that he may now have the ability to control her
control her.
for nefarious purposes. So it's very interesting and a really good call out. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone has left to go to Samara, so there's no one to fight. Dane reads Jack's memories and discovers that he has placed lures all over Basgiath to attract the wyverns and venin. And so they have to hunker down and fight. They set the infantry to the task of finding and destroying the lures, but it's too late. Thousands of wyvern are on their way. Everyone basically gets put to the task of fighting, and they're just trying to like hold down the fort until Melgren and the rest of the forces at Samara can arrive. Um, Violet doesn't want to abandon the ward because she thinks there might be power there. So she asks Brennan to try and mend it, and he agrees, and it works. The wyvern arrive. Violet manages to kill some, but it doesn't make a dent. Her mom makes a storm to help her signet, but that makes it harder for the griffin to fly. The wyvern figured out that if they stay in the cloud cover, it'll make it harder for Violet to aim without hurting one of their own. It's just really, there's a lot going on. Violet's almost taken out. Rhiannon saves her. Then Riddick gets his leg bitten off.
No,
um,
not Riddick. It's Sawyer. Sawyer gets
Sawyer,
his
yes,
leg.
sorry. Yes, thank you. Sawyer gets his leg bitten off. But he's okay. We think he's okay. He gets taken to
No,
the
and Justinia runs after
infirmary.
him to help him.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. We find out that the Venom are attacking so that they can capture Violet. So they're after Violet, which will be important in just a minute. Melgren arrives. He wants to put all their forces into protecting the Vale, but Violet wants to try and mend the wards. Jacinia stayed. She did not go into hiding to translate, and she realizes that in Lyra's journal, it mentions 7 dragons, not 6.
Mhm.
Melgren wants Sigale and Tarn to go to the Vale, but they refuse. The sage shows up finally. He had been at Samara, and Zayden says that he's here for him. He says, he's here for
Mhm.
me. It
Yes.
took him a while to get here from Samara, because the sage thought that Zayden would go to Samara, so that's why wasn't there. And Violet is like, "How do you know that?" And Zayden just says, like, "Don't ask," which again I think is interesting because if there is some kind of like power, if Violet asks questions, you have to tell the truth. Xaden is saying, don't ask because I would have to tell you.
It's
um
almost like Xaden already knows what her power is, and he's been testing her this whole time
whole
with
time.
him
Yeah.
saying, "Ask me questions because I will have to answer
Yeah.
truthfully because that
Yeah.
is your signet." I feel like if it's that, it's just like it's there all the time. It's all the
Yeah.
time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like literally half the book is
How
basically
do we not see that?
her,
Yeah.
her second signet, and we just missed it the whole time.
Yes. Xaden goes to hold the line and fight to give Violet time to mend the wards. Even though she hasn't quite figured out who the seventh dragon is, though she has suspicions, she kind of alludes to it. We don't figure it out. They bring the dragons together, but they still have to power up the stone, right? And we'll remember it took three very strong writers weeks to do that, and so they do it. So they are like, bring all the writers, let's all just try to power it up as very quickly as we can. Violet has a conversation with Andarna, and it reveals that Andarna is the head of her own den, a seventh den, which is why she's been allowed to do whatever she wants. Her scales aren't actually black, but she wants to be like Taryn, so she somehow made them black, and she is the last key that they need to power the ward
She's
stone.
like a shamelon dragon. She changes
Yes.
color and it's
Yes.
beautiful and it's special. And she's been hiding unhatched for 600 years until she overheard the leaders of the den saying that there was
Right.
basically a really, really powerful scribe that was from a writer family. And she realized
Yeah.
that my theory that the prophecy is going to come to pass. I think another thing to quickly point out, and this is just going back to Xaden quickly with the sage, but when the sage comes in, he comes in this really relaxed, overly showy manner.
Yes.
Like it very much says like he knows exactly what he's coming to. Like he has already seen this happen. Like he already knows what's going to happen. And
Potentially.
he is just letting it play out in real time. Like the sage already knows what is going to come to pass. We really
Mhm.
get that feeling in that scene.
Yes. And Darna reveals that she waited 650 years to hatch and has been kind of monitoring. And she woke up and hatched because she heard about someone with the head of a scribe but the heart of a writer. Um, they can't get the stone powered up, so Violet decides to help do it, and she is basically gonna burn herself out.
Mhm.
She's like, I'll this is my purpose. She looks through Taryn's eyes and sees that Xaden is struggling, so she gets even more intense. She's burning herself out. Everyone's begging her not to. um and finally she lets the power go, and as she comes to, she realizes that her mom is telling Sloane to siphon all of the power out of her to ward the stone, but Violet is still not fully, like, she's still kind of burnt out. She doesn't know what's happening. General Sorengale insists, and Violet checks on Xaden again and realizes that he's dying. She's feeling his emotions, seeing through his perspective. Again, this could be the bond, but there could be more from my theory. um she forces down the bond of all three of them, presumably Terrence, Gale, and Xaden, fight. And she has a flash of feeling the taste of wyvern between her teeth, potentially indicating that she is feeling Sigale's perspective, which again goes
Mhm.
back to my theory that she can see through perspectives. Sloane drains General Sorengale, powers up the wards. General Sorengale dies. It's very emotional, but it works. The ward is in place. The wyverns start thudding to the ground. They're dead. Violet goes to Xaden. Sigale and Taryn are standing guard, and basically Xaden turns around. He has red eyes. And revealed that he killed the sage. He broke the tether, is the word that's used, which I think is interesting. And he's like, you need to be afraid of me because he has taken from the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I wish we could talk for like 20 minutes about like just the last two chapters, but we need to wrap this
We
up.
we may need to in another episode. Like we may just need to
Yeah.
like break down because so much happens at the end. And a line that I really want to go into is around when General Sorengale is dying. She says, "You are everything we dreamed you would be."
Yeah.
Now I thought that was really interesting that she said everything we dreamed. It didn't. It sort of came to this like, what did they just? They didn't just. It sounded like they maybe had a lot of intention behind having Violet.
Yeah.
That maybe Papa Sorrengail actually maybe found something, a prophecy about a rider with a scribe's mind, and was like, we need to create this. It could also have something to do with the three siblings, because then she also says all three of you. So it could be all three, but it certainly points to them having some intention behind having Violet, that there might be
Yep.
more to it than just, oh, hey, I got pregnant and oh, I'm having a
Yeah.
third baby, that maybe there was some
Totally.
intention there.
Totally. The book ends with Zayden's POV, so we see him like kind of drawing from the ground. He wakes up from bed, laying next to Violet, which is good. So we know they're like kind of together. He leaves the room to go talk to Jack. He wants to know what the cure is. Jack's like, "There's no cure. You're only ever going to hunger for more." And then Jack says, "Welcome to our fucked up family. Guess we're brothers now." And the book ends. So
And
that
all
is
our
Iron
hearts are
Flame.
broken into a million pieces, and
Yes.
we have to try and figure out a way to mentally recover. And hopefully that's going to happen in the next couple of days when ONYX Storm comes out. But most likely, Rebecca is going to break our hearts even more, and we're going to be in even more pain in the next couple of weeks. So just have to wait
Yes.
and see.
All right, now that we are through that very long summary of Iron Flame, that took us a
If you
very
guys
long
do
time to
not
do.
feel like you are now thoroughly summarized in Iron Flame, that was the longest summary in Romantic Readers history. That was a
I think
90-minute summary. I mean, in fairness, Iron Flame is huge. It's a huge book. So congratulations, Ali. That was an excellent, excellent effort. We are all up to date with Iron Flame
Yes.
and all the little
I
bits and
swear I
pieces.
actually did cut it down and tried really hard to only do the important parts. I feel like we learned so much in Iron Flame about the the like the lore and the history and the world, that it's just like, and we don't yet know what's important and what isn't, that it's so hard to
So you
want
have to
to
just say
not
everything.
give
You have to
details.
just talk
You have
about
to say
everything
everything.
that comes up and what it
Every
is.
tiny little thing. And there's still so many details, obviously, that I missed. Somebody's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you missed this one really, really important thing," or I'm
Look,
sure
I
we
think
only
you
got
covered the
one thing
most
wrong.
important ones. If we've missed, they can always bring them up and say, oh, and this happened. It's really
Yeah,
hard. And you can either narrow it down to 20 minutes and you give the most overview of overviews, or as you've done, you have broken it down in some of the major plots and what happened. And it'll be really interesting to then follow on from that into Onyx Storm and what that's going
yeah,
to be about.
absolutely. All right, so now that we're through the summary, and when this episode comes out, I think we'll only be like 4 or 5 days away from the release of Onyx Storm.
Yes.
So, we're gonna do a bit of final Onyx Storm predictions. Maybe we'll have to do an episode about if we were right about any of them or just wrong about them all, which is entirely possible. But Nicole, I'll let you go first. What are some of your like final Onyx Storm predictions? What do you think is going to happen? What are some of the theories that
Yeah,
you are really
I have
convinced
so
of?
much. I have like where do I begin? Once I begin, I'm not gonna stop. Look, I guess firstly, just general story. I truly believe that Violet is going to be trying to find a cure for Xaden. Like I feel like that's gonna be the
Yeah,
major aspect of the story. Obviously, a lot is going to unfold from that, but when Rebecca has said in interviews that Violet has one goal and one goal that she's focusing on, my guess is that that's going to be a cure for Xaden.
100%. I'm with you 100%. And from just like storytelling mechanics perspective, right? Like in Iron Flame, Violet is kind of the one who's insecure, who, Xaden has to really fight for them because Violet is insecure. She doesn't feel like she's enough for him. She feels like she's keeping secrets. So Xaden has to really fight. I feel like in Onyx Storm, it's going to get flipped. Violet is now going to have to be the one fighting for the relationship and fighting for them because Xaden is going to feel like he's not enough. He shouldn't be with her. He's not going to keep her safe. And so she's going to be so intent on not just finding a cure for him, like physically, but finding that cure to help him emotionally and mentally because he's going to be such a different person
Yeah,
because of it.
yeah, absolutely. Now, I really hope this recording is going okay, guys, because I'm getting a little bit of like freezing and that of Alley, but hopefully that's just my connection and the recording is perfect. But we'll have a look at it when we're done. If there's any little pauses, we apologize, but we're too excited to stop this episode. We have to keep going and talking about all our predictions and theories. So I guess my next one would be, I mean, I want to believe that Violet's second signet is that she is a truthsayer. I am very strongly on board with that theory now, and I think it points a lot of the pieces we've seen. I feel like they could all overlap into the one kind of story, and I just feel like there's so many Easter eggs in there with Rebecca, with like even Zayden saying, tell me, ask me a question and I'll have to answer it. I feel like there's just so many little hints towards it that if it ends up being that, it'll be so funny because she's been hinting it the whole way along and we
Yeah.
haven't noticed it. So I'm going to stick behind that as my second signet theory. How about you?
Yeah. That is definitely my next choice. I'm
Yeah.
still sticking, and probably if you really put my feet to the fire, I would say the one that I think is the most likely. But I am still sticking with my original theory just because it's more fun that she has some ability to to see into other people's perspectives or something like that,
Yeah.
primarily because I like the idea that she also has an intrinsic ability. I think similar to Zayden, they need to match each other beat for beat, and so she is light and he is dark. I think their intrinsic abilities need to really complement one another, and it needs to be an intrinsic ability. So that's why I kind of go more with the perspective thing, because I think that's would be considered more of an intrinsic ability than truthsayer. Though truthsayer could also be considered intrinsic, it
Well, I
just
was
doesn't
gonna
seem to be
say, I
classified
feel
that
like
way.
that could be a part of truthsayer. If she was a very, very strong truthsayer, she
That's
may
true.
be able to go in and actually see from their perspective. So I think it actually could all link together. I
It could.
agree with you, and
Absolutely.
I think there is the line in Iron Flame that talks about that often when one really powerful signet is created, there is an opposing signet just as strong. And I think we've potentially seen that with Violet and Zayden, with the light and the dark. And we may also see that with the intrinsic and whatever the opposite to intrinsic is. So, would that be a truthsayer? Would that be like something that would shield or block someone that is an intrinsic? That I guess is going to be very interesting. So,
Mhm. Mhm. And I kind of like the idea that if Zayden can read intentions, Violet can read like perspective or what's actually happening on the surface, right? Those two things could be considered opposite. Right, like when you are in someone's perspective, you're kind of seeing what's happening, but you're not necessarily gleaning the intentions of everyone in the conversation, whereas like Zayden would have the intention. So again, it who knows what it will be, but I do think truthsayer is
yeah.
what I think is has the most like textual evidence, and I
Yeah.
just really like my theory too.
I am so interested. I cannot wait to find out what Aric's signet is and whether it
Yes.
will also be a signet that will complement Violet. I'm really
Mhm.
curious if Rebecca is going to explore, dare I suggest, a second love interest or just a second kind of really strong connection. I just think it's very interesting that she's brought this prince into the story that has also gotten a blue dragon and is potentially very powerful and may
Mhm.
also have some links to, I don't know, just complementing Violet. I just think that's going to be very interesting to see whether it is something that complements Violet or whether he just gets a really powerful signet and he's just an important part of the story in a completely different way. Because
Yeah.
I theorize that Zayden is going to pull more power and ultimately become full blown Venom. It is going to kill me. It is going to hurt me. But I feel like based on all the reactions videos that I've seen of Rebecca's family and that, I get the feeling that something painful is coming, but it's not like a death. It doesn't look like they're like crying, like, oh my God, a dragon died or something like that. It's more like, no, he pulled
Shock
power from
value.
the ground again. I cannot handle this. No, he's full blown Venom. That's the feeling I get just from, I mean, that's me just reading into their reactions.
Yeah.
And I guess what I think from that is that we could go through quite a long period where Xaden ends up becoming full-blown enemy. And, Violet may, for a period of time, find companionship with someone else
Yeah.
while she's trying to rescue Xaden. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
where Rebecca's going to take it.
And I will say this right now. This is the one thing I am certain about. Violet and Xaden are not going to be okay in this book. I think a breakup is coming. Even if they are endgame, I think a breakup is coming.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense for the story. It's, we're only in the third book of 5. Like, this would be the point where they would break up because then they would have 2 books to get back together. I think Xaden is going to feel like he is not enough for her, and that is going to lead him to do stupid things. I fear that he is going to leave her, either to go join the Venom, to go search for his mother, to go do something just to be away from her. Maybe he goes to the Isle Kingdoms because he thinks that will keep her safe. And she will maybe go after him. I'm not so sure about that, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm warning our listeners now, buckle up because I
Get
am
ready for pain.
pretty
For pain.
certain that a
In
breakup is
saying that,
coming.
I'm going to counteract that theory and say I actually think that with Xaden now being Venom, I think he's going to be more selfish and he's going to start taking what he wants. He may even struggle to let Violet go, particularly because she's so powerful and he's going to have an attraction to her power. So I think there's a really reasonable chance that he's going to be really selfish now and he's going to be a bit that villain that doesn't care that he's doing the wrong thing. He's just going to do it anyway. So we may see Xaden just throw caution to the wind and be like, I'm going to do whatever I want and I want you, and you and me are it forever. So I feel like I could possibly see Violet having to step away because it's the only thing she can actually do, that it's so bad that she doesn't have a choice, that it
Yeah,
won't be
and she still
Xaden.
loves him and she still wants to be with him, but
But he is
again,
so
when she said there's
evil
that
now
one
that she
song.
has to make that choice and make that break, which will be absolutely heartbreaking. That will
Yeah,
kill me
yeah,
on every element of my soul. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely scared. I don't see. I mean, this is a 5-book series. I don't see us resolving this in this book. I don't see it like we resolve that and then Zayden and Violet go off into the into the happy place for the
No,
next 2 books. I
no.
feel like that's more book 5. So yeah.
Yeah. A breakup is coming, and, Rebecca Yarros said that if there was one song that would sum up ONYX Storm, it's that song where, the guy says, "How can I love you when I don't love myself?" And I don't think good things are in store for them.
I
I hope
know.
I'm wrong. I hope as a reader, I hope I'm wrong, but I think I'm
Mhm,
right,
mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm sure though that whatever happens, I do not believe that Violet will ever give up on Xaden. I think that she
No.
will fight. I mean, I'm here just like playing around with ideas that there might be another love interest for a while, like even just to fill a void. But I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that she will really explore anything
Yeah,
away from
I'm still positive that Xaden and Violet are endgame. I don't see a
100%,
world
100%.
where she pulls this Sarah J. Maas and, 3 books in, she like completely he becomes a full
Flips it.
villain
No.
and then they'll end up together. I don't think that will happen. I just don't think we can't get a happy ending. That wouldn't make for a good 5-book series.
No, and the thing is, Xaden and Violet are so profoundly connected because of their dragons. Like they basically are mates, and we're seeing the opposites. The light and the dark, and the playing of that. So I think there's a really important story here, and to bring someone else something different into it, I don't see that potentially happening. But I do see there being a lot of pain before we get that final payoff and a happy ever after. So I think that yes, we may have some pain ahead for us. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to switch topics here a little bit. I obviously am obsessed with the theory that Xaden will have a third signet and
Mhm.
that all of the marked ones have 2 signets because of the, one line about Liam in Fourth Wing wielding ice when he was a distance wielder or a
Mhm.
far-sighted wielder. Um, I'm going to say if we do not get any clues or basically get that revealed in book 3, then I'm going to feel pretty certain that that theory is wrong.
Yeah.
Like I don't
And
see
that
a
was just
world
an
where,
editing error.
yeah, that it was just an editing error. I don't see a world where she waits 4 books in to reveal a third signet. So I'm going to keeping pretty close eye on that because unless it comes out in book 3, I don't think there's any weight to that
Yeah,
theory.
yeah. I feel like that is, as I think I've said before, I think if they start throwing in too many signets, it becomes too
Yes.
like, oh, everyone gets a signet, and everyone gets a second signet, and everyone gets a third
Yeah.
signet, and it's going to be too much. So my theory is that it was just an editing error, but we'll wait and see. It would be super
And
interesting if we did manage to find out some, interesting details. I,
yeah.
on a different subject, am very excited to see the impact of Xaden being a Venom on scale. I think that what we've seen so far with the characters that potentially are Venom, and that they have had a lot of control over their dragons. They have had not only the potential to influence them, but potentially fully control them, to not even be killed by them dying. So Segale's in a very dangerous place right now, and that will make Taryn pissed. He is
Yes, I was
gonna be
just about to say,
pissed.
I'm more interested in how Taryn will feel about it than how Sigale will feel about it.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm really interested to see how that all plays out, and if we're going to get a real like look in on how that impacts not just Xaden, but how it impacts the dragons, and
Yeah.
yeah, and how that's going to play out. I think it's going to be really, really interesting.
Yes. And I didn't say this in the summary because there was just so much. But when Xaden pulls from the ground, right before he does it, Sigale says to him, like, no, you can't do this. I chose you. Meaning, like, maybe indicating, like, like, I took a risk on you. I knew you wouldn't do this, or I chose you not to, because I didn't think you'd do this, or something like that. Like, she did not want him to do this, to make this decision. So I think she's gonna be mad. I think, talking about Taryn and Sigale, I think Taryn and Sigale are gonna be fighting in this book. I think they're not gonna be. I think they're also gonna be mimicking, like, some of the Zayd and Violet stuff. And we saw that Sigale kept Violet or Zayden's second signet from Taryn, and he was mad about that. And they were like, they like blocked each other. They blocked Xaden and Violet from them for like days because they were fighting
Yeah,
and they didn't want them to hear it. I think Sigale is going to have also known about how the sage, or the general, whatever's above the sage, was targeting Xaden, and she didn't tell Taryn again. And I think they're
yeah.
going to be pretty mad at each other in this next
Oh,
book too.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be fun times in that little quad of internal thinking. Um, I on a different subject. I am extremely excited to see Garrick's signet. I think we are definitely finally going to find out what his signet is. And I mean, I theorize, which I think someone has shared, that his signet is turning big things little and little things big. I think there's a lot of pointing to that, because they said that Garrick was being picked on in threshing, and it was Xaden who protected him. But as we know now, Garrick's bigger and stronger than Xaden. So who on earth would be attacking him for being weak, unless he has that signet and he actually is able to make himself bigger as well. So I am very excited to see that. I think that's just one of the little signets I'm excited to see.
Mm-hmm. And it would make sense how they were so easily able to smuggle daggers out, like, to smuggle a lot of weapons out. He
Yes.
just makes them really tiny, and then they don't, they're much easier to carry. So that could definitely
I
be
just
it.
don't know why. I think probably my biggest question is, why has Rebecca kept it secret until now? Why have we not heard about it until now? Why has she gone, oh no, I'm not even going to talk about that till the third book? Unless it's quite important to the story that she hasn't wanted to share it because it's going to give away a big part of the story. I think that's something that I find really interesting. Like, I would personally,
Potentially, yeah.
I would feel like if you were friends with people, I feel like you would be at some stage you would sit in a circle and go, "Hey, let's all go around and say what each other's signets are." Like, "Hi, my name is Violet, and I'm my dragon's Taryn, and my signet is lightning wielding." So I feel like, why would you
Yeah.
not go around a group and say what your signet is?
And I want to get more clarity on Imogen's signet as well. I don't
Yes.
think that we have a ton of clarity. I think we all think it's similar to Dane, but we don't exactly know what it's like. Um, the
Yeah.
only thing I will say is I have an author who's we're friends on Instagram. We chat, and she was like, "Oh, I think Garrick, she just doesn't want to back herself into a corner. So she's just kind of waiting until it serves the story's purpose to reveal his signet." So, like, that is could also be a a possibility, but it's more fun to think that like she's this evil
Keeping it a
mastermind,
secret to give
and
us
it's
a big
really
shock.
important, so she's keeping it from us. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes,
Um,
exactly. I agree with you on Imogen. I think Imogen's going to be a huge part of book 3. I think her story, her backstory, is going to be huge. And I love the theories out there at the moment that she may have silver hair just like Violet, but she is keeping it hidden with the pink color. I think someone said a really interesting thing with I can't remember which one has a signet that they can make themselves look like someone, but they tried to make themselves look like Imogen. And then they said, oh, but I struggled to get the correct color of your hair. And that's probably because they weren't trying to color silver hair pink. They were trying to probably color brown hair pink or blonde hair pink. So I think that is a really interesting tell. And I love the theory that she may actually have a connection to the royal family because she's got the pale green eyes, which obviously the paleness would come from having the same illness that Violet had. And the green eyes, we've only seen that in the royal family. So yeah, Imogen is literally the most I know the person I'm most excited to hear more about in this next
yeah.
book.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea that she is similar to Violet in potentially even has full silver hair and not partially silver hair. I speaking of people who are really important, when I was reading Iron Flame this time around, especially, I was struck with how little Andarna is in book 2. She's pretty much in the dreamless sleep for a very large portion of it. We don't get a lot of her until the very end. We see sassy Andarna, and that's about it. So I
Mhm.
am thinking that in this next book, we're going to get a lot more of her now that she is out of the dreamless sleep and now that like the truth about her is revealed. And that I love the dragon lore and the dragon history, and that is something that I'm super excited to learn more about in this next book. Surely we won't just like not talk about it again. Surely
No,
we'll find out
well, I
more.
think we know this 7th type of dragon is a new that was the big surprise at the end of book 2. So you'd have to assume that that would be a huge part of the next book. And I guess our current theory would be that Violet's going to be in search of this 7th dragon den, both for Andana to help find her dragon people, and the other being to try and find out do they have a cure for Xaden, particularly because it seems that this 7th dragon is connected to whatever cured the venom 650 years ago. So it's definitely going to be a big part of solving this
Mhm,
venom problem that they have based
mhm,
on what we know
mhm.
so far. So
Yeah.
that's going to be very, very interesting. Okay, here's a big question that I want to pose. Who do you think is most at risk of dying in this book?
Okay. I I'm gonna say something that like I don't want to be true and is gonna freak people out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think
yeah.
it's
We
happening
we
in this
we
book.
don't we do not support this. We are just mentally preparing ourselves for the pain we
Mentally preparing
may
ourselves.
get presented with. Yeah.
I believe that Taryn will die. I don't think it will
Uh,
happen in this book. So I don't think it's happening in this book, but I he has said so many times, "You will be my last writer." I can see a word. We don't we it always says a rider without their dragon is dead, but Violet has 2.
yeah,
I think Tairn knows if he dies, it will not kill Violet and thus, Xaden and Scale because
yeah,
Violet has Andarna. So, I don't think it's happening in this book. I think we're going to need Tairn for whatever the final, because we don't even really know who the big, the final boss is yet to go back to like
yeah.
video game terminology. We don't know yet.
I've always
Um,
yeah,
but
and
I
I
do
and I
think that
agree with you. I feel like it would happen at the end of this book or maybe the next one. It would be an epic ending, but I do feel like I just the fact she's got 2 dragons, the fact they've always said Andana will never have a rider. I just feel like that has to be challenged, and the only reason that would be challenged is if Taryn can no longer fly Violet, and that would be
Yeah.
potentially him dying. So I do not want that to happen, but he is also high on my risk list. Like the list of who is
Yeah.
at risk of dying, he is right up the top. And I think what's going to be really interesting to see in this book is Andana and whether her character is growing. Because right now, if Taryn left the story, it would be kind of so empty. Andana is not really big enough at this point in time to replace him.
No.
But if her character changes and we see him just drift a little bit, I think you got to go, okay, get ready. We're about to be inflicted with a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I think someone that is hugely at risk in this book is Riddick. I think that I've seen her talk about him in a few interviews, and I think you've got to consider to yourself the reason that Rebecca chose Liam as the person to not survive the first book. She said he didn't have any more room to grow. She said he was perfect. He was perfect in every way. His character no longer had this real growth opportunity. So therefore, he was knocked off, which we, of course, do not agree with because I feel like there could have been a whole love story and everything else for Liam. But I think that, I don't know, I feel that we love Riddick. He's a great side character. He's funny, but I don't know. I think if there are other characters that I feel like are too important to die, like Imogen, others. I think Sawyer has lost his leg, so I feel like the chance of him dying, I feel like he's had his risk
Yeah.
that he's
He's not
past it.
going to
And there's the
chop
whole
off his
thing.
leg and then also kill him. I just don't see that happening. Like,
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot
he
of story there.
doesn't
And him and
survive getting his
Justinia,
leg
I wouldn't be
eaten.
surprised if he goes now and somehow becomes a writer that's joining the scribes as well, because he's obviously not going to be able to fight as much as he has till now. So I think we may see him get more involved in what a writer can be when they can no longer fly, when they can no longer fight. How do they still be
Especially
part of
considering
the, yeah,
his connection to Justinia and, the potentially budding romance that's happening there.
yeah, yeah. Garrick may be a little at risk. Bodhi may be a little at risk. They're not the hugest of characters, so they could potentially get knocked off. I don't know. Who do you think is most at risk?
I think that's the list. I mean, I I could see a world potentially where Dane dies, but I think he's such an interesting connection to Colonel Atos and then whatever is going on with Bezgaiath leadership and all the different tensions and factions within the military of Navarre that I feel like he could die, but maybe not in this book. So I'm not sure. I think that's the list. I don't have anyone else that I'm
Oh,
like
well, there's someone I would
sure.
love to die that won't. And that's Jack. Fucking
Yeah,
Marlowe. He
I
won't
know.
bloody die, will he? No, of
Or
course not. I
Cat.
mean,
Or Cat. I would love for her to die. I
yeah,
don't
she
forgive
could go
her.
too. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I actually think, is it Serena? Selena.
Selena. Mhm.
She is probably more at risk of going because she's really nice and we like her, and
Yeah.
everyone that's nice and likable tends to get killed off. So
And then
she's
Cat
probably
would
more at
then
risk of dying.
become the next in line for the throne
Exactly.
after
I
the
think that would
sister and
create a
after.
really interesting story because I don't know, what
Yeah.
would Kat be like as a leader? She has shown herself to be very sort of power hungry and a little bit just selfish. No, it's not necessarily in it for the right reasons. So I think that will
Mhm.
be very, very interesting. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
have one final theory, and
Mhm.
that is, and this is coming off of, there was an interview with Rebecca Yaros where she said that in the final chapter with Zayden, she had done a lot of info dumping and just like told us a lot of stuff. And then her editor came back and was like, "What are you doing, girl?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." 'Cause she said she was just so excited to get the answers to us. And if we think about, and she said that was the final chapter. And if we think about what the final chapter is, it's Zayden's POV. So, what would we be learning about that she's info dumping except for Zayden's history and family and what happened, what basically getting answers about why he thought the sage was coming for him, why he said the sage had a tether on him, why when Violet asked him, "Hey, why do you think that the sage is coming for you?" He says, please don't ask me that, because again, there's something about the
A
asking and he
secret
has
he is
to tell her.
keeping.
I think so obviously he has a lot more secrets. I think that he is connected to the Venom in some way. I think, we've hinted about this a lot. It could be his mom, it could be his like grandfather who did bond Sigale. I could see a world where his grandfather that bonded Sigale turned venom and she was really mad about it and like had to kill him or something. And then for Xaden to go and turn venom too, that could be influencing that line of like, I chose you. So, I just think there's a lot of secrets that Xaden's going to reveal, and they're going to have to, my prediction is that they have to do with his connection to the venom, whatever that
Yeah.
connection is.
I just like God, I'm just like imagining that scene, and I'm, I am predicting, as painful as it is, that Zayden's going to be full blown venom, and maybe Violet has finally come into her power, and let's say she's a truth sayer, and now she can literally ask him any question and he'll answer, and potentially he's at the point where he doesn't care anymore. If he's pulled from the ground enough that he's removed his inhibitions, his feelings of guilt, of feeling an obligation to keep things secret, he could just open up and reveal all these secrets, but all these horrible secrets that are going to be painful and hurtful and dangerous, I guess, is what it could be.
Yep.
So I
And
think,
we did get that bonus or that little snippet scene that she shared with us where there's a venom attack and Xaden has blocked Violet from his mind. And not only that, like, I think it's normal maybe that he's blocked her from his mind, maybe because of the hive mind or something like that. He doesn't want people to do that. But her mind is open and he is not reaching in saying, where are you? Are you okay? What's going on?
mhm,
Like, the
mhm,
Xaden that we know in Iron Flame would be like all over that, asking her, is she okay? What's happening? Like, where are the Zenon? Where is she? And he's not doing that. So I think you might be onto something. Like, becoming venom is going to really mess with him, and like,
yeah,
maybe not even physically, maybe what he's going to have to overcome is his own, he's going to be in his own way, I think,
yeah,
in this
yeah,
next book.
yeah. I can see a future where it's Xaden versus Violet. That all we could almost see if we think of Star Wars and Kylo Ren and Rey, we could really see
Yeah.
that fight of light and dark and them against each other. I would say I don't want this to be the case, but it's a great story and it's the ultimate, to bring him back again from being a full blown villain. But I can
Mhm.
see a period of time where they are against each other and Violet is the only person strong enough to fight Xaden. But then, of course,
Yeah.
we also have to think about there is possibly some Melgren, some Venom leader that I think has some kind of connection to this writer with a scribe's mind. I've seen a theory that has said that the leader of the Venom is a writer with the scribe's mind, which is why they knew that they needed that to counteract it. So that is definitely a possibility as well. And if that is the case, I believe that's Naolan, but we'll just have to wait and see what that might be.
Yeah.
I
Have you
also
read the
think,
Book of Azrael and the second book in that series,
mhm.
The
No,
Throne
no,
of
I
Broken
haven't.
Gods? Okay. So the Book of Azrael, like, the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's called Gods and Monsters, and it's like, you know the king of the gods, the person who's supposed to be really good, and then a monster. And then, they fall in love in book one. And then in book two, sorry, this is spoilers, like, her sister dies. And so she becomes a villain. And so most of book two, the guy is trying to like convince her to not be bad anymore. And she is like doing horrendous things and like he's loving her through it. So I could easily see a very similar situation playing out here.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I bring it up.
yeah,
Great
yeah.
series, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, no, I'll have to put it on my TBR.
Yeah.
Final thing, I think, is I definitely think that Basquiat is gonna be swarming with venom. Like, they're
Oh,
gonna be scattered
absolutely.
all over the place. Like, there has been an infestation of venom, and they're gonna be popping up left, right, and center. I
And
think
they have been hiding in the scribes quadrant. That is what I think. I think they have been hiding there. That's why we saw that one in the bonus little snippet that we got. Like, they're in the scribe's robe and they take the hood down and they have red eyes. I think that they've been hiding in the scribes quadrant, and more than that, I think many of the scribes are in on it. I'm not going to say that all scribes are bad,
Mhm,
and I do not believe that Jacinia is bad. I believe that Jacinia is on their side and is a true friend to Violet, but I do believe that there are some venom scribes.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, 100%. I also think the conscription day is going to be very, very dangerous this year. I think I've spoken about it before, but I think that we're going to have a lot of venom joining the ranks on that day, and we're going to have a lot of very dangerous first years. So that is my theory, but we're just going to have to wait and see. And by the time this is released, we will only have like 3 or 4 days till we actually get the book.
I know. Okay, I just thought of one last question. Sorry.
Okay.
So Violet's going to be in her third year. Is she going to be a wing leader? Probably not, because she wasn't a squad leader. But
Yeah,
it
and
would
I
make
don't know
sense for
if
her
you
to be
have
a
to
wing
be a
leader.
squad leader in order to become a wing leader. I mean, I think that Violet is she doesn't want to be a leader, but she's so naturally a leader. And I think that,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think whether she's got the title or not, I feel like people are going to follow her regardless. And I think when it
Yeah.
comes to this quest that she'll potentially go on, she's going to be like, yeah, she might not even acknowledge that she's in charge, but she'll be in charge. So that's
Yeah,
my
for
theory.
sure. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this very long episode?
I think it's just, you know what? Firstly, I just want to call out that obviously this book was a real labor of love for Rebecca. I think that she has commented a few times that if she hadn't written her book Variation, that ONYX Storm might not have existed. So I think just if Rebecca happens to listen to this episode, thank you so much. We are here, we're having fun with these theories and that, but first and foremost, we just know that it must be such hard work to write any of these books, and we're just so thankful that you take the time and the effort and the blood, sweat, and tears to create these things. So if you're listening,
Yeah.
thank you so much. We appreciate you. And look,
Yeah.
as always, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. These books have been amazing. It's so exciting to see just the whole Bookstagram world just getting turned upside down in these final weeks, getting so excited for the release. And it's just so much fun. There are dragons in bookstores. There are midnight release parties that are getting ready. It's just so exciting. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super excited. I can't wait. And Nicole and I have decided that we're going to commit after this episode, this 2 hour plus episode in the new year, trying to do smaller, shorter episodes for you guys. So hopefully some of our ONYX Storm content is like 20 minutes or less to make it easier. But thank you so much for hanging in there with us,
absolutely.
finishing the whole summary.
We sometimes want to we want to do these big 2 hour long episodes when they're required, but we also just want to sometimes just give you just like one major thing. It's like,
Yeah,
what do we think about this particular, what
just
do we think about
one
the
thing.
snippets? What do we think
Yeah.
about Imogen? And we'll just give it like a 20 minutes so that so that you can just pick and choose what you want to listen to, and you can pick all your favorite parts rather than listening to us waffle on for 2 hours. But we will still give you these from time to time for our long-term listeners that just love being with us for like a whole
Yes.
2 hours and
Yes.
10 minutes.
Well, thank you so much for listening. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So a 5-star rating, well, any rating, but especially a 5-star rating, goes a long way to help other listeners find our show. Give us a comment, give us any kind of interaction. You're always welcome to follow us on our Instagrams. We are very active in our DMs. There's never a DM I don't respond to. So good luck the next week. We will see you on the other side of whatever is waiting for us.
Let's cross our fingers. Happy
And
ever after. Happy ever
yeah,
after.
happy
Everyone
ever after,
survives.
happy
It's all
ever
going to be
after.
fine. Yep.
Yes. We will be here for emotional support when it's all over. And yeah, just good luck.
Good
Thanks for
luck.
listening.
Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.